Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching second and final part of What If Naruto and Team 7 accidentally goes to Avatar Universe. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Katara and Aang went to a window nearby and said, "Hey, great bridge guy, can I talk to you over here for a second?" Aang.Kun, you seem a little unsure about all this, Katara responded. Before realizing that Katara, Sakura, Sokka, and Sasuke were giving him strange looks, Aang remarked, "Yeah, that might be because I don't know anything at all about the spirit world. It's not like there's someone to teach me this stuff," he said. Katara said, "So, can you help these people? I have to try, don't I? Maybe whatever I'll have to do will just come to me," Aang replied. "Hey, don't worry Aang.San. I'm here too. Datbeo," said Naruto. Katara remarked, "I think you can do it Aang.Kun." Then Sakura said, "Me too." Sakura struck Sokka on the back of his head after he said, "Yeah. We're all gonna get eaten by a spirit monster." Hot springs close to Zuko's vessel Iroh was dozing off in the hot spring when he heard rustling in the bushes and was immediately awakened. Iroh leaned back in the water and said, "It seems I dozed off and missed my nephew's deadline. But it was a very sweet nap." He asked, "Who's there?" Before a small meadow. Vole appeared by the hot spring's edge. A meadow. Vole. Iroh had allowed the small rodent to climb up on his hand. "I should have known. You startled me, little one." The meadow. Vole ran a little until it was in front of him and began jumping up and down wildly, as if to warn him of something, before the ground began to tremble. He allowed it to descend again on the hot spring's side. Before 3 earth benders descended. He was trapped by 3 trails of dust clouds that moved along the ground and 3 small stalagmites that sprang up at him from the walls of the hot spring. As their commanding officer approached, one of them removed Iroh's clothing from a nearby branch and turned to face him. "The earth bender exclaimed, "He's a Fire Nation soldier." "He's no ordinary soldier," said the earth bender's commander. "This is the Fire Lord's brother, the Dragon of the West, the once great General Iroh. But now, he's our prisoner." Village of Senlin. Before they began to move through the village, Naruto and Aang were standing just outside the door to the main hall. The door closed behind them. As they made their way to the village gate, Aang said, "Hello, spirit. Can you hear me? This is the Avatar speaking. I'm here to try and help stuff." Gazing out the window, Sasuke exclaimed, "This isn't right. I'm not just going to sit here and do nothing while the Dobi and Aang wait for some monster to show up." The elderly man said, "If anyone can save us, they can." The son said shortly after Sokka's statement, "I still think they shouldn't have to face this alone." Naruto looked at Aang and said, "Well, it's sunset, so where is he?" Instead. Before spinning his glider over his head and crashing it to the ground in front of him, Aang exclaimed, "I don't know. Hey, bye. Well, spirit. I hereby ask you to please leave this village in peace." "Okay. Well, I guess that's settled then." As he watched Aang return to the village's main hall, Naruto muttered to himself mockingly, "Yeah, right. Like some huge and powerful spirit will listen to what a kid like you says." A voice in Naruto's mind said, "It's coming," just before a huge black and white spirit entered the village through the gate. As the spirit began to follow Aang, he exclaimed, "Hey, Aang.San, behind you," and Aang turned to face the enormous spirit. "Whoa, it's bigger than I thought," he thought. He was interrupted, though, when Heibai let out a screech that sent out waves of blue energy. "You must be the Heibai spirit. My name is, hey, wait up," he cried as he got up on his hind legs and screamed again before he walked over Aang, who shouted after him, "My name is Aang, I'm the Avatar, and I would like to help." He then ran after the spirit. Naruto rushed to his fellow Avatar and exclaimed, "It's no use Aang.San. He's not listening." Instead. Standing next to a damaged house, Heibai destroyed it with a simple swing of his left arm before moving almost too quickly to be seen and causing damage to another house. Then, moving swiftly once more, he appeared beside a tower, punched it with both hands, and let out a screech that destroyed it. He then disappeared toward the main hall of the village. Before jumping out the window, Sasuke exclaimed, "I can't take this anymore, I'm going out there to help them." The old man exclaimed, "No wait," but it was too late. Sakura shouted, "Wait, Sasuke. I'm coming too, and then leapt out the window. Just behind Heibai, Naruto leapt onto the roof of a house. After he formed the Cage Bunshin hand sign and 4 clones appeared, he yelled, "Hey, Heibai. This is the Avatar speaking, you know, the bridge between our 2 worlds. I would like to ask you to kindly stop what you're doing, or I will have to stop you by force." The spirit then turned around and swiped his arm at the clones, causing them to puff away, while the original Naruto struck the roof of another house, fell toward the ground, and then landed on his feet. Sokka exclaimed, "That's it, they need help," before leaping out the window and sprinting in the direction of the spirit. Katara cried, "Sokka.ni.san. Wait," as the fireball blasted out of his mouth and headed directly for the massive spirit. Sasuke yelled, "Kaden. Gukakyo no Jutsu." However, the spirit turned to him as soon as it struck and tried to seize him, but Sakura was able to push him aside in time, and she was taken instead. When Naruto turned to leave the village, he yelled, "Ah! Sakura-chan," and ran after the spirit. However, as he got close to the gate, Sokka appeared in front of him and threw his boomerang, but it had no effect at all, and Heibai quickly grabbed him as well. Aang exclaimed, "Sokka.san," before grabbing his glider and pursuing the spirit as Naruto ran, accelerating with chakra. As Katara ran toward the gate, Sasuke exclaimed, "Sakura," as he realized what had just transpired. She called out, "Sokka.ni.san," before Kakashi and the villagers arrived. Hot springs close to Zuko's vessel. Zuko and a few of his men were walking toward the hot springs where Iroh had been earlier when he yelled, "Uncle, uncle, where are you?" According to one of the soldiers, "Sir, perhaps he believed you went out without him." Before noticing a pile of rocks in the hot spring where his uncle had previously been, Zuko remarked, "Something's not right here, that pile of rocks." One of the soldiers remarked, "It appears that there has been a landslide, sir." "Land doesn't slide uphill, those rocks didn't move naturally. My uncle's been captured by earth benders," said Zuko. With Naruto and Aang as fast as they could, Aang and Naruto kept up their pursuit of Heibai. Sokka shouted, "Hey, Aang.san, over here, Naruto," exclaimed Sakura. After that, they emerged into the forest's burned area, where Aang and Naruto were able to approach the spirit. "Help!" shouted Sokka. As he flew closer to Sokka, Aang exclaimed, "Hang on, Sokka.san," and extended his hand to take Sokka's. As he approached his crush, Naruto exclaimed, "Sakura-chan," and extended his hand to take Sakura's. However, Heibai and the two disappeared as soon as Aang grabbed Sokka's hand and Naruto grabbed Sakura's. Aang then fell to the ground while Naruto stumbled, and the two of them fell into what appeared to be a bear's nest with statues of a bear mother and several cubs at the edges, while Aang and Naruto were unconscious in the center. Then Aang woke up and cried out, "Sokka-san, Sakura-san." He turned to face Naruto, who was perched on one of the bear cubs as if it were a chair, and said, "So, you're finally awake." Aang exclaimed, "Naruto.san," before lowering his head to the ground and saying, "We failed." "Nah, don't talk like that, Aang.san, we've got more chances to get them back. We'll just try again tomorrow." "Datbeo," said Naruto. Alongside Iroh the Four Earth Benders were riding their ostrich horses through the woods on a road not far from the village. Iroh was sitting behind one of the Earth Benders, his legs bound together by a rope, and he had handcuffs around his wrists and chains around his body. Iroh said, "Where are you taking me?" The Earth Bender's commander declared, "We're taking you to face justice." "All right. But where exactly?" Iroh inquired. The commander of the Earth Benders remarked, "A place you're quite familiar with, actually. You laid siege to it once for 600 days, but it would not yield to you." Iroh remarked, "Ah, the great city of Ba Sing Se." The Earth Bender's commander remarked, "It was greater than you were apparently." Iroh yawned and rested on the back of the Earth Bender that was mounted on the ostrich horse he was riding. "I acknowledge my defeat at Ba Sing Se. After 600 days away from home, my men were tired, and I was tired, and I'm still tired." The Earth Benders lifted him up and carried him back on the ostrich horse after he appeared to fall asleep and then fell off and onto the ground. They were unaware, though, that one of Iroh's foul smelling sandals was on the ground. Village of Senlin. The old man approached Katara from behind as she sat at the village gate, gazing into the forest. The elderly man remarked, "I'm sure they'll be back." As Katara put it, "I know." As he covered Katara with a blanket to keep her warm, the elderly man remarked, "You should get some rest." Katara remarked, "Everything's gonna be okay." As Aang and Naruto got closer, the elderly man remarked, "Your brother and friend are in good hands. I would be shocked if the avatars returned without them." As dawn broke, Aang said, "Katara. Katara. Chan, we lost them." However, neither Katara nor the elderly man heard him as he and Naruto approached them. The old man remarked, "The sun is rising. Perhaps he will return soon." Naruto exclaimed, "What? Hey, we're right here. Datbeo." A voice that seemed to come from everywhere around them asked, "Haven't you figured it out yet, kid?" As he turned to face Naruto, who nodded, Aang said, "Hey, Naruto-san. Did you hear that?" Naruto inquired, Who are you?" The realization of who it was caused Naruto's eyes to widen. "Who I am? I think you already know, Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto." He questioned, "You're the Kyuubi no Yoko?" Kyuubi exclaimed, "Hi." Naruto questioned, "How is it that you can talk to us like this?" "We're in the spirit world, and in here I have a lot more freedom," Kyuubi replied. Aang looked around and said, "Wait a minute, who are you anyway? And where are you?" After Kyuubi said, "The humans know me as Kyuubi no Yoko. I am the most powerful spirit of my time, and as for where I am, a large transparent blue fox with 9 tails appeared out of Naruto's stomach, and blue chains wrapped around the fox's body. Kurama no Kyuubi." Keep in mind that everything in the spirit world is transparent and blue in this particular cartoon episode. Before noticing the chains, Aang exclaimed, "What the, and I thought Heibai was big. You're even bigger than the trees. And what's with the chains?" he asked. First, Naruto said, "Well, you see, alongside Zuko. On the road that the earth benders had previously traveled, Zuko picked up the sandal his uncle had left behind, took a whiff, and reacted instantly to the foul odor. He got up on the back of his Komodo rhino and said, 'Yep, that's Uncle Iroh.'" Village of Senlin. Naruto nodded in response to Aang's question, "What? So your own father put that spirit inside of you?" "Hi, but he saved the village by doing it, and it can't have been easy on him either, so I'll forgive him," Naruto said, then grabbed one of the chains and pushed Kyuubi back into him. Then Sasuke approached Katara and took a seat beside her. She nodded when he said, "You've been waiting here the whole night? Do you think they're all right?" she inquired. "Don't worry, they're in good hands. If I know Naruto, he won't quit searching until he's found them, even if he has to go to the spirit world to do so," Sasuke said, and Naruto's sweat dropped. "He's got no idea how right he is," he responded. Aang looked up at the sky and said, "But still, what are we supposed to do? Avatar Roku, how can I talk to you?" They heard what sounded like a roar all of a sudden. When they saw what appeared to be a bright light and narrowed their eyes, they realized it was a dragon approaching them. "Sokka.san/Sakura.chan?" they asked, respectively. Naruto remarked, "That's definitely not Sakura Chan or Sokka.san." Aang then removed his glider's wings and tried to take off, but he simply fell back to the ground. "Don't worry, that's not a malevolent spirit," Kyuubi replied. Before trying to send a gust of wind at the dragon, Naruto said, "Yeah, like I'm gonna believe what you say." "What? I can't air bend?" he asked, then made the Kage Bunshin hand sign, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. However, nothing happened. Jutsus don't work either. After landing in front of them, the dragon peered down at the two avatars. "You don't know where Sokka.san and Sakura.san is, do you?" Aang responded. After lowering his head in their direction, the dragon moved each of his whiskers toward their foreheads, touching Aang's and Naruto's, respectively. The two then saw a vision of a red dragon that was exactly like the one in front of them right now, with Avatar Roku sitting just behind its head. "Your Avatar Roku's animal guide, like Appa is to me," Aang replied. When Naruto said, "We need to save our friends and we don't know how. Is there some way for us to talk to Roku?" the dragon lowered itself to the ground, allowing the two air benders to ascend upon him. Aang said, "We'll be back, Katara-chan," Naruto exclaimed. "Take us to Roku," and the dragon rose before taking off. Alongside Iroh saw a dragon with the two avatars riding on it fly overhead as the Earth Benders were riding up a mountain trail, but none of the other Earth Benders had noticed. The Earth Benders commander inquired, "What's the problem?" Before formulating a strategy, Iroh stated, "Nothing. Actually, there is a bit of a problem. My old joints are feeling sore and achy, and these shackles are too loose." "Too loose?" inquired the Earth Benders commander. "That's right, the cuffs are loose and they tangle around and bump my wrists. It would help me if you would tighten them, so they wouldn't shake around so much," Iroh replied. Before turning to face the person seated on the ostrich horse, the Earth Bender commander remarked, "Very well. Corporal, tighten the prisoner's hand cuffs," he said. When the corporal got off his ostrich horse and started to tighten Iroh's handcuffs, they came to a halt. Iroh then exhaled hot air from his nose, which caused the handcuff around his left wrist to turn red. Iroh brought his right hand down on the Earth Bender's hand as the corporal held it over the handcuff, causing his hand to burn from the heat. After Iroh let him go, he fell to his knees and screamed before the elderly but strong fire. Bender leapt down from the ostrich horse, then leapt into the air and kicked a fireball at two of the ostrich's feet. As the Earth Benders struggled to control their ostrich horses, Iroh landed with his back to the ground before rolling towards a cliff and falling. Crescent Island, Fire Nation. The dragon was flying in the direction of an island with a volcano in the center of a crescent shape. The dragon then soared straight up towards the ceiling after passing through a temple's open door. Naruto shouted, "Hey, watch out! We're gonna crash, Datbayo," just before they abruptly shot through the ceiling. It was then that they entered a room with a large circular calendar on the floor, a statue of Avatar Roku on the wall across from a door, and a wall behind him that resembled orange flames. Aang and Naruto leapt from the dragon's back and proceeded to the statue. As they gazed at the statue, Aang remarked, "I don't understand. This is just a statue of Roku." Then, before the dragon's whiskers touched their foreheads once more, they turned around and saw a comet in the distance. Naruto and Aang glanced back at the statue before turning back to the dragon. "Is that what Roku wants to talk to us about? A comet?" Naruto asked. The dragon lowered his head to reveal a pink light from the sun shining through a ruby and striking the flame wall directly to Roku's head. "When can we talk to him?" Aang asked. "Kurama no Kyuubi." That is, from the perspectives of Naruto and Aang. Once more, the dragon's whiskers touched their foreheads, and they witnessed the days passing across the island. The light struck a different spot every day until it finally struck Roku's statue's face. Aang and Naruto gazed at the circle on the ground, then at the statue, and finally at one another. "It's a calendar. And the light will reach Roku on the solstice," Aang exclaimed. Naruto exclaimed, "And that must be when we can talk to Roku, Datbayo," before they turned to face the dragon. Before the dragon flew them back towards the Earth Kingdom, Aang exclaimed, "We can't wait that long. We have to save Sokka.san and Sakura.san now." Iroh and the Earth Kingdom. One of the Earth Benders trapped Iroh with a wave of rocks and dust, and he rolled down the side of the cliff. Then three of them leapt down and skidded down the side of the cliff until they came to the former general. "He is too dangerous, Captain. We can't just carry him to the capital. We have to do something now," a man said. Before Iroh spat out a rock, the captain stated, "I agree, he must be dealt with immediately and severely." Above the forest, the Sky Appa had been taken out by Katara to look for their missing companions. She turned the bison around and said, "It's no use, Appa. I don't see them anywhere. Our best hope is to go back to the village and wait." Below her, on the ground following the path the ostrich horses had left behind, Zuko noticed something and glanced up into the sky to see Appa. He was going to follow the avatars. However, after glancing back at the ostrich horse tracks, he decided that his uncle's life was more important at that moment. Using the avatars as the dragon passed through the burned out forest, it appeared as though Aang's body was perched atop the bear statue's head, while Naruto's body was positioned by the statue's feet. Aang and Naruto then entered their respective bodies as soon as the dragon passed through the statue's head. Then both of them opened their eyes, and Aang leapt to the ground as Naruto got to his feet. They both gazed into the bear statue's eyes before Naruto fled and Aang took off with his glider. Village of Senlin. When Aang and Naruto eventually came back, Kakashi, Sasuke, and Katara were standing outside the main hall doors of the village, and they looked up. As Sasuke approached him and Momo landed on Naruto's head after flying down from a roof, Katara yelled, "You're back," and rushed to embrace Aang. "I was wondering when you'd build up the courage to come back, Dobi," he replied. They both grinned and Naruto shot back, "Oh, shut up, Teme." Although most people couldn't see it, there was friendship concealed in those words. Katara inquired, "Where are Sakura.san and Sokka.ni.san?" Before the sunset, Naruto answered in Aang's place, "We're not sure." Alongside Iroh was bound to a rock with his arms stretched out over the top of it, and the 5 earth benders were in the center of a crater. Before Earth bending a boulder out of the ground and raising it over Iroh's arms and dropping it, the captain declared, "These dangerous hands must be crushed." However, Zuko arrived at that precise moment, kicked the rock away, and then kicked the chains that bound Iroh to the rock, releasing him. He got to his feet and Iroh said, "Excellent form, Prince Zuko.san." Zuko remarked, "You taught me well. Surrender yourselves. It's 5 against 2, you're clearly out. Numbered." The captain responded. Iroh remarked, "Ah. That's true, but you are clearly out. Matched," before the captain stomped the ground, causing boulders to rise out of it and standing on each of his men. Then the 2 fire benders were hit by 1 boulder each from the other 4 earth benders. As Zuko swiped his feet along the ground to knock out 2 of the earth benders, one of whom threw a boulder at the fire prince and had it fall over himself, Iroh simply used the chains that were fastened to his handcuffs to break the boulders. A big boulder was then thrown at Zuko by 2 of the earth benders, but Iroh caught it with his chains, swung it around, and threw it directly back at the earth benders. Zuko dodged to the left to avoid the first boulder, then to the right to avoid the second, and finally he ducked under the third before swiping his foot along the ground and sending a wave of fire at the earth bender. The captain then stomped the ground, causing 3 boulders to rise, and he sent all 3 of them flying towards Zuko. Before he could throw a wave of earth at the prince, Iroh's chains wrapped themselves around his feet, and the retired general pulled, causing the captain to fall on the earth to fall on him. Zuko then punched the air, sending out a first fireball and then another, but the captain blocked it with his helmet. Zuko said, "Now would you please put on some clothes?" Village of Senlin. After waiting for Bai to reappear at the village gate, Aang and Naruto made the decision to return to the village. As they passed a house, Bai appeared on the opposite side of it, demolishing it in the process, and the 2 avatars used their air bending abilities to shield themselves from the falling debris. When none of them moved from their positions, Katara yelled, "Aang.kun, Naruto.san, what are you doing? Run." Aang and Naruto ran towards Bai, jumped over him, and touched his forehead before realizing that he was originally a panda bear. Bai then let out a screech and fled towards the main hall. Naruto and Aang landed in front of him, and he declared, "You're the spirit of this forest." Aang held up the acorn Sakura had given him, then laid it on the ground. The spirit picked it up, examined it, and then turned around, changing into a panda bear. "Now I understand, you're upset and angry because your home was burned down. When I saw the forest had burned, I was sad and upset, but my friend gave me hope that the forest will grow back." A number of bamboo stalks materialized as he was leaving the gate, and the individuals who had been captured by the spirit emerged from them. As they ran towards each other, Katara and Naruto yelled, "Sokka.ni.san/Sakura.chan." Katara gave Sokka a hug, while Sakura punched Naruto for attempting to embrace her. Sokka inquired, "What happened? You were trapped in the spirit world for 24 hours. How are you feeling?" replied Katara. Sokka said, "Like I seriously need to use the bathroom," and left. A moment later, the group was confronted by the village chief and elders. The village chief said, "Thank you, avatars. If only there were a way to repay you for what you've done." Katara nudged him after Sokka said, "You some supplies, and some money." Saying, Sokka.ni.san, Sokka said, "What? We need stuff." The village chief bowed and turned to leave, saying, "It would be an honor to help you prepare for your journey." "I'm so proud of you, Naruto, Aang.san. You figured out what to do all on your own." Kakashi replied. "Kurama no Kyuubi." By that, he means that they worked it out on their own without assistance. Looking back at the comet vision, Naruto remarked, "Actually, we did have a little help, and there's something else." According to Sasuke, "What is it?" "We need to talk to Roku, and we think we've found a way to contact his spirit," Aang replied. "That's great," exclaimed Sakura. Sokka remarked, "Creepy, but great. There's a temple on a crescent-shaped island, and if we go there on the solstice, me and Aang.san, LL be able to speak with him," Naruto replied. Katara remarked, "But the solstice is tomorrow." Naruto said, "Yeah, and there's one more problem," before turning to face Aang, who carried on his behalf. "The island is in the Fire Nation." While Naruto, Sasuke, and Kakashi were seated in the saddle, Aang was on the ground in front of Appa, tugging on the big bison's reins. Aang pulled on the reins and said, "Let's go, Appa. Come on." Appa growled in protest, saying, "Look, I'm sorry, but Katara-chan, Sokka.san, and Sakura.san aren't coming to the Fire Nation with us. If they got hurt, I'd never forgive myself." He then looked up at the sky, bison, and yelled, "So get your big butt off the ground and let's go," before pulling on the reins once more and falling to the ground. Looking in the direction of the voice, Aang saw Sokka, Sakura, Katara, and the villagers. "I think his big butt is trying to tell you something." Katara said to Aang more than the others, "Please don't go, guys. The world can't afford to lose to the Fire Nation. And neither can I. Look, we're all pretty strong, while you three are weak. I don't know if we'd be able to protect you while we're in the Fire Nation," Naruto replied. Sakura shouted, "Hey, who said I was weak, Baka? I'm a ninja too." Sakura was shocked when Sasuke said, "Face it, Sakura, out of all of us here, you're the weakest. Even weaker than Sokka." Sokka shouted, "Hey, what's that supposed to mean?" Sakura's inner self exclaimed, "Weaker than Sokka.san? No way," as she visualized lifting a massive boulder above her head that she was certain would be difficult for even an earth bender to lift. "Sakura-chan, look, me and Aang.san have to go and speak to Avatar Roku in the Fire Temple, and we wouldn't be able to bear it if anything were to happen to you guys," Naruto replied. "Then why can Sasuke-kun and Kakashi-sensei come with you?" Sakura inquired. "Just let them come, they're not gonna let us go without them anyway, and at this rate we won't get to the island in time for the solstice," Kakashi responded. In simultaneous defeat, Aang and Naruto said, "Fine." Then, as Momo landed on Naruto's shoulder and Sakura, Katara, and Sokka mounted the bison and mounted the saddle, Aang leapt up on Appa's head. The village chief handed Aang some supplies and said, "It's a long journey to the Crescent Island. You'll have to fly fast to have any chance of making it before sundown. Good luck." Aang began, "Thank you for," but the village chief interrupted him. After saying, "Go," Appa took off for the sky. Afterwards, not being able to sleep, the village leader left his house and was taken aback to see Zuko standing there. "Seen the avatars lately?" the Fire Prince inquired before shoving the man through the door. "Having trouble sleeping?" Appa. Sky. Given that Appa wasn't moving very quickly, Aang exclaimed, "Come on, we've got a long way to go. Faster," and he quickly quickened his pace. Zuko's ship, Ocean, sailing into Fire Nation waters. "Of all the foolish things you've done in your 16 years, Prince Zuko.san, this is the most foolish," Iroh replied. Gazing through a telescope to determine the location of the avatars, Zuko remarked, "I have no choice, uncle. Have you completely forgotten that the Fire Lord banished you? What if you were caught?" Iroh responded. Zuko turned to face his uncle and shouted, "I'm chasing the avatars. My father will understand why I'm returning home." Iroh remarked, "You give him too much credit. My brother is not the understanding type," before Zuko turned on the telescope and looked back. When Zuko saw Appa, he shouted, "Helmsman, full steam ahead," and looked over his shoulder. There they are. "Hey, Aang.san. We've got a problem," Sakura exclaimed upon seeing Zuko's ship. Sokka went on, "And it's gaining fast. That's Zuko, but don't worry, he shouldn't be able to follow us into the Fire Nation. Kakashi responded. Naruto questioned, huh? Why, isn't he their prince or something? He was banished from the Fire Nation 3 years ago, said Kakashi. Naruto inquired, how did you know that, Kakashi, sensei? Well, unlike you, I've been studying this time, and its recent history. Things regarding the war specifically, Kakashi replied. Sakura exclaimed, there's something happening down there, as Zuko's ship's deck emerged with a catapult. Iroh waved a small fan in his face and said, really, Prince Zuko-san, can't you shoot them down with something more fragrant? Zuko then threw a fireball at the rock covered in oil that was inside the catapult. When he yelled, on my mark, fire! One of his men severed the rope, sending the flaming rock hurtling in the direction of the bison. Naruto shouted, something's coming, and Aang grabbed the reins, allowing them to avoid the flaming missile. We have to get out of Zuko's range before he shoots another fiery rock at us, said Katara. Sokka questioned, can't you make Appa go any faster? Yeah, but there's just one little problem, Aang replied. A blockade, Zuko exclaimed upon noticing the blockade, which signified their approach into Fire Nation waters. Technically we are still in Earth Kingdom waters, turn back now and they cannot arrest you, Iroh replied. If we fly in north, we can go around the Fire Nation ships and avoid the blockade. It's the only way, Aang replied. According to Sakura, there's no time. This is exactly why we didn't want you to come, it's too dangerous. Datbeo, Naruto replied. Katara stated, and that's exactly why we're here. Sokka said, let's run this blockade. As he pulled the reins, Aang exclaimed, Appa! Yip. And Appa began to fly more quickly in the direction of the blockade. Zuko exclaimed, he's not turning around. Please, Prince Zuko-san, if the Fire Nation captures you, there's nothing I can do. Do not follow the avatars. Iroh replied. Before shouting, run the blockade, Zuko said softly, I'm sorry, uncle. Commander Zhao's ship, blockade. As he peered through his telescope, Zhao remarked, this must be my lucky day. The Avatar, and the banished prince. Behind him, a soldier said, Commander Zhao. Senpai, what are your orders? Zhao commanded, shoot the bison down, Captain. But there's a Fire Navy ship out there, Senpai. One of our own, what if it's hit? The captain replied. The fire benders then ignited the oil covered rocks inside the catapults with the cry, launch, Zhao said, so be it, it belongs to a traitor. Ignite. After that, the Fire Navy ships fired rocks at Appa and Zuko's ship. Fortunately, Aang managed to make his way through the rain of flaming rocks, but some of Appa's fur began to burn. Katara, Sakura, and Momo promptly extinguished the fire. Aang said, Appa, are you okay? And Appa growled in response. Before the air Bender grabbed the reins in the sky. Bison rose even higher. Zuko's ship navigated through the rock rain, which occasionally caused waves to crash onto the deck when they struck the nearby water. Nevertheless, the back of the ship was struck by one of the flaming missiles. Zuko turned around when an engineer yelled, Prince Zuko. Sama. The engines are damaged, we need to stop and make repairs. In order to avoid losing the avatars once more, he said, do not stop this ship. Zhao commanded, launch, and another blast of flaming rocks was launched into the air. Before the fiery rocks abruptly appeared there as well, Appa rose above the clouds. They nearly got struck by one of them before soaring through the confusion. Appa then flew through the smoke left by the collision of two rocks, but Sokka fell out of the saddle and descended through the clouds as they emerged on the other side. Before grabbing the reins and dragging Appa down to the ocean, Aang cried out, Sokka. San. Katara was able to seize Sokka's arm just above the water and haul him onto the saddle. Then, while Naruto was laughing, Appa placed his feet on the water and started to jump back into the air. However, as he did so, a fish struck Sasuke in the face, causing him to fall backwards before Momo caught it. Several more flaming rocks were hurled at them as they flew closer to the blockade, but they were able to dodge each one as they approached the fire Navy ships. As he waited for the bison to approach, Zhao exclaimed, ready, and then yelled, fire. The sky. Bison was then hit by a final rock, but Kakashi used a series of hand signals. Sweden. Suiryuden no Jutsu. Suddenly, a water dragon emerged from the ocean, collided with the flaming rock, and then carried it away under the waves. At last, Appa managed to break through the blockade and enter the Fire Nation. "We made it!" exclaimed Naruto. Sokka remarked, "We got into the Fire Nation. Great. I can't believe we have to go through that again," said Sakura. Sasuke said, "We told you not to come." The ship of Zhao. The captain inquired, "Where do you think the Avatar is headed, sir?" Gazing at Zuko's ship, which was still heading their way, Zhao remarked, "I'm not sure. But I bet a certain banished prince will know." Iroh declared, "We're on a collision course," as their ship was sailing directly toward the spot where two ships would soon pass one another. "We can make it," Zuko exclaimed. After assembling a boarding party to board Zuko's ship, the captain declared, "The boarding party is ready to apprehend Prince Zuko, sir." "Wait, cut the engines and let them pass," Zhao responded. Wondering what his superior was thinking, the captain said, "Sir." Then, as Iroh wondered why he had allowed them to pass, the prince glanced up at Zhao as Zuko's ship passed between the two much larger ships. Appa. Sky. As the hours passed, Appa continued to fly through the sky, and Momo, who was sleeping on top of Naruto, was the first to notice that it was getting late. When Momo woke him up, Naruto yelled, "There it is. Datbao. The island where Roku's dragon took us." The Crescent Island Aang hugged the bison and said, "Nice flying." The bison then rolled over on his side, and Sakura approached and gave him a belly rub. She said, "Ooh. You must be tired." Sokka was working out when he said, "No, I'm good, refreshed, and ready to fight some fire benders." Sakura said, "I was talking to Appa." Momo gave Sokka a look when he said, "Well, I was talking to Momo." They were walking up a road that led to the fire temple shortly after that. Sokka remarked, "I don't see any guards. They were hiding in front of the temple's entrance." "The Fire Nation could have abandoned the temple when Avatar Roku died," said Kakashi. Naruto exclaimed, "It's almost sundown, we better hurry." Datbao. Before they dashed through a few hallways and into the temple, arriving at a spacious chamber. Kakashi remarked, "We're not alone here." Then he and the others turned to see 5 individuals with strange red hats and red robes. The great sage, who led them, declared, "We are the Fire Sages, guardians of the Temple of the Avatar." Aang exclaimed, "Great, I am the Avatar." Naruto was about to respond, but Kakashi interrupted him. I don't think they know that there are 2 avatars yet, and it'd be best if the Fire Nation wouldn't find out about it," he said quietly. Before throwing a fireball at them, the great sage uttered the words, "We know." However, Aang put out the fire by using air bending. The others fled as Aang screamed, "I'll hold them off, run." Then Aang delivered a sweeping kick that sent a wave of air at the fire sage's feet, causing them to fall. The great sage and the others stood up and dispersed to look for the Avatar's group, saying, "If the Avatar contacts Roku, there's no telling how powerful the boy will become. Spread out and find him." The group dashed through the temple's hallways until Aang emerged from one of them, exclaiming, "Follow me," before taking off. Sakura questioned, "Do you even know where you're going?" Aang ran around a corner and then ran back past everyone, saying, "Nope, wrong way." Before a fire sage emerged from around the corner and they followed Aang. The others took care of him. The fire sage shouted, "Come back," and then sprinted after them. The group turned around to see the fire sage after rounding another corner that led to a dead end. The fire sage declared, "I am a friend, and I don't want to fight you." Sokka declared, "Fire benders aren't our friends." However, they were taken aback when the fire sage approached Aang and knelt down. The fire sage then said, "I know why you're here, Avatar." "You do?" inquired Aang. Before getting to his feet, the fire sage said, "Yes. You want to talk to Avatar Roku. Sama. I can take you to him." "How?" Naruto inquired, and the fire sage shifted a lamp to the side, exposing a tiny hole. He then placed his palm over the hole and blasted a tiny ball of fire out of it, causing a section of the wall to split open and reveal a hidden passageway. The group still didn't trust the fire sage, but he said, "This way." Then, they heard the other fire sages say, "Time is running out," quickly, in the distance. The fire sage followed them and shut the secret door from the opposite side as the group nodded and exchanged glances before entering the hidden passageway. Zuko's ship, Ocean. "What's he up to, Uncle? Why didn't Commander Zhao arrest me?" replied Zuko. "Because he wants to follow you. He knows you'll lead him to the price you're both after, the Avatar." Iroh replied. "If Zhao our trail of smoke, then that's exactly what I'll let him do," Zuko replied. Bliss, Hole, Fire, Temple, and Crescent Island. As he guided the group through the tunnels, the fire sage, Shyu, remarked, "Avatar Roku. Sama once called this the Bliss Hole. He formed these secret passages out of the magma." Naruto inquired, "Did you know Avatar Roku?" "No, but my grandfather knew him. Many generations of fire sages guarded this temple long before me. We all have a strong spiritual connection to this place," the Shyu replied. Aang inquired, "Is that how you knew I was coming?" "A few weeks ago, an amazing thing occurred. The statue of Avatar Roku Sama, its eyes began to glow," the Shyu replied. "That must have been when we were at the air temple. Avatar Roku's eyes glowed there too, as well as the eyes of all the other Avatar statues," Sakura replied. The Shyu stated, "At that moment, we knew you had returned to the world." "If this is the Avatar's temple, why did the sages attack us?" asked Sasuke. "Things have changed. In the past, the sages were loyal only to the Avatar. When Roku Sama died, the sages eagerly awaited for the next Avatar to return, but he never came," the Shyu replied. Aang stopped walking and said, "They were waiting for me." "Hey, don't feel bad. You're only 100 years late," Sokka replied. Naruto remarked, "You're not making it any better, Sokka-san. They lost hope the Avatar would ever return. When Fire Lord Sozin began the war, my grandfather and the other sages were forced to follow him. I never wanted to serve the Fire Lord. When I learned you were coming, I knew I would have to betray the other sages," the Shyu replied. The Shyu grinned when Aang said, "Thank you for helping me. Have you forgotten that I am also the Avatar?" "Hey, don't you mean, thank you for helping us?" Naruto inquired. As he scratched the back of his head, Aang said, "Oh, right, sorry." The Shyu questioned, "There are two Avatars?" "Yeah. Those guys came from the future by accident," Sokka replied. The Shyu questioned, "The future? How far into the future?" Kakashi smiled and said, "That's a little hard to say, but I'd estimate roughly 2.000 years." The Shyu remarked, 2.000 years? That's a lot of time. "Yeah, but the arts of bending have been long lost to the world, and there's hardly anyone who still knows of the Avatar," Kakashi replied. Before continuing their journey, the Shyu remarked, "I see." Shortly after, they arrived at a lengthy staircase and said, "We'll follow these stairs to the sanctuary." As they ascended the stairs, the Shyu said, "Once you're inside, wait for the light to hit Avatar Roku Sama's statue. Only then will you be able to speak with him." They finally arrived at the top and entered a spacious room. The sanctuary was completely encircled by the room, and there were enormous statues of dragons on pedestals that appeared to support the roof along the corridor that ran from the walls to the sanctuary. When the Shyu noticed that the sanctuary's door was shut, he responded, "No." Naruto said, "Shyu-san, what's wrong?" As Aang and Naruto began to attempt to force the sanctuary doors open, Shyu declared, "The sanctuary doors, they're closed. Can't you just open them with fire bending, like you opened that other door?" Katara responded. "No, only a fully realized Avatar is powerful enough to open this door alone. Otherwise the sages must open the doors together, with 5 simultaneous fire blasts," Shyu replied. Before returning to the area where the dragon statues were to gain some distance, Sasuke remarked, 5 fire blasts. Huh? Move aside." The others then moved aside, and the Uchiha performed a number of hand signals. Sasuke abruptly spat 5 fireballs out of his mouth, and each one struck one of the 5 dragon heads on the gate in the mouth, causing the gate to open. "Kaden, Housenka no Jutsu. Sakura exclaimed, "You did it, Sasuke." Zuko's ship, Ocean. Zuko was in a boat that was loaded down on the water before setting sail, and he said, "Uncle, keep heading north. Zhao will follow the smoke trail while I use it as a cover." Zhao followed the ship. Fire. Temple on Crescent Island, outside the sanctuary. Naruto cried out, "Great, Sasuke, you did it." Datbeo. Just before Kakashi heard faint footsteps beyond. He said, "Naruto, Aang.san, you should get in, the other fire. Sages are coming." They both nodded and started to run toward the gate, but then a burst of fire struck the floor in front of them, and everyone turned to see Zuko. Zuko said, "You two are coming with me." He then threw a second fireball at them, but Sasuke stopped it. The fire. Sages appeared just as the two avatars rushed through the gate after the Uchiha commanded, "You two, get into that room, quickly." The Great Sage questioned, "Shio, what are you doing with the avatars group?" "I'm sorry, Great Sage. But we are the fire. Sages, we're supposed to help the avatar, not hand him over to the fire, Lord," Shio replied. The Great Sage said, "So you're betraying us, Shio?" And Shio gave a nod. The Great Sage then hurled a fireball at Shio, who used a wall of fire to block it. The sanctuary's gate eventually closed, and a brilliant burst of blue light emerged from it. Sasuke remarked, "Hey, looks like you're too late." The Great Sage replied, "No, sanctuary inside the sanctuary." Aang and Naruto stood in front of Roku's statue, which had the light shining on its chest. "The light hits the statue and we talk to Roku, so where is he?" Naruto replied. "Why isn't anything happening? We don't know what we're doing, all we know is air bending," Aang replied. Naruto exclaimed, "Please, Avatar Roku, talk to us." Just before a cloud of smoke abruptly passed them and the statue's face was illuminated. When the cloud cleared, they found themselves at the base of a volcano, facing Avatar Roku. Before turning to face Aang, Roku remarked, "It's good to see you, Aang. And you too, Naruto. What took you so long?" he asked. Beyond the sanctuary as he launched a huge ball of fire at Zuko, who ducked it and then kicked on the ground, Sasuke yelled, "Kaden Bukakyo no Jutsu." This sent a wave of fire at the Uchiha. The older boy pulled out two kunais, one in each hand, and Sasuke leapt out of the way before charging at him. The prince then charged at Sasuke, holding a fire knife in each hand. The prince simply deflected Sasuke's kunai blow with one of his fire knives before raising the other knife towards Sasuke's chest, which had seemingly been left vulnerable. But before pushing off and the two of them leapt away from one another, Sasuke used his Sharingan to block Zuko's knife with his free kunai. "I see you're not as weak as you were back on Kyoshi Island," Zuko replied. Even though he was still holding the kunais, Sasuke weaved a series of hand signals after saying, "I've been training. Kaden Housenka no Jutsu." Before hurling fireballs to stop all of the fireballs that were aimed at him, Zuko remarked, "Hey, if you think those small fireballs can stop me, you're in for a rude awakening." His eyes widened, though, when Shuriken flew out of the fire, asking, "What?" Then, as the sharp weapons struck him, Zuko held his arms in a cross in front of his face. He was shocked to see how easily they had penetrated his armor. While Sasuke and Zuko were engaged in combat, the others were engaged in combat with the fire. Sages. Shio was engaged in combat with one of them, while Sokka was engaged in combat with another, though he was clearly outmatched. Sakura and Katara were engaged in combat with one of them, but since they were without water, their chances of winning were much lower than Sokka's. Kakashi was also engaged in combat with the Great Sage Raiden Jabashi. Then, a bolt of lightning shot out of Kakashi's hands and toward the Great Sage, who, in order to shield himself from the thunder, built a wall of fire in front of himself. A ball of fire was then hurled at Kakashi by the Great Sage, but Jonin reportedly avoided it with ease before making the hand signals. Kaden Karyudan no Jutsu. When a fire dragon emerged from Kakashi's mouth, it struck the Great Sage, who dodged it just in time. He then held his hands in front of his chest, palms facing one another, and a ball of fire formed between them. He then reached out to Kakashi, but even with the Sharingan, He was only just able to avoid the ball of fire that sprang at him. But as the fireball struck the wall, there was a tremendous explosion, and everyone could see that the wall had a big hole in it once the smoke had cleared. Wow! Kakashi thought, if I get hit by one of those, I'm done for. Then there was a sudden clapping, and everyone turned to see Zhao and his men. Zhao remarked, "What a great show! With a bow, the great sage said, Commander Zhao. Zhao claimed that his men had captured Zuko, Shiryu, Sasuke, Sokka, Katara, Sakura, and Kakashi, with the latter allowing them to do so because he felt outnumbered and was unaware of Zhao's skills. And Prince Zuko. It was a noble effort, but your little smoke screen didn't work. 2 traitors in one day. The Fire Lord will be pleased. You're too late, Zhao. The avatars inside and the doors are sealed," replied Zuko. If you're wondering why Zuko used avatars rather than avatars, it's because he didn't want Zhao to know that there are 2 avatars. However, the fire sages are aware of this now because they witnessed the 2 of them dash into the room. No matter. Sooner or later, he has to come out, Zhao responded. Sanctuary. I have something very important to tell you too, Aang, Naruto. That is why, when you were in the spirit world, I sent my dragon to find you, Roku replied. Naruto questioned, is it about our vision? The one of the comet? Roku replied, yes. Aang inquired, what does it mean? 100 years ago, Fire Lord Sozin used that comet to begin the war. He and his fire bending army harnessed its incredible power and dealt a deadly first strike against the other nations. Roku continued. Naruto questioned, so the comet strengthened their fire bending? Yes. Stronger than you could even imagine, Roku replied. But that happened 100 years ago, what's it got to do with the war now? Replied Naruto. Listen carefully. Sozin's comet will return by the end of the summer, and Fire Lord Ozai will use its power to finish the war once and for all. If he succeeds, even the Avatar won't be able to restore balance to the world. Aang, Naruto, the 2 of you must defeat the Fire Lord before the comet arrives, Roku stated. But we haven't even started learning water bending, not to mention earth and fire, Aang replied. Mastering the elements takes years of discipline and practice, but if the world is to survive, you 2 must do it by summer's end, Roku stated. Beyond the sanctuary, as Zhao's men prepared for the Avatar to emerge, everyone had been chained to the dragon statues. Zhao commanded, when those doors open, unleash all your firepower. How's Naruto and Aang.san gonna make it out of this? Asked Sakura. Sokka questioned, how are we gonna make it out of this? Kakashi smiled and said, don't worry, Sokka.san. I'm sure that, by some miracle, we'll all get out of here. Sanctuary. Before Naruto placed his hand on Aang's shoulder, Aang questioned, what if we can't master all the elements in time? What if we fail? He looked at Roku and said, don't worry, Aang.san. I'm sure that if we really want to, we can master those elements in no time. Then he had an idea and removed his hand from Aang's shoulder. By the way, Roku, how did you know about me? He asked. Roku smiled and said, a friend told me. Who? Inquired Naruto. Naruto. A long-haired woman with red hair suddenly approached Naruto from behind and gave him a hug. Wah? Asked Naruto, still in disbelief over what had just transpired. Roku said, Avatar Naruto, meet Avatar Kushina. Naruto then turned around after escaping Kushina's hold. Kushina nodded when Naruto said, K. Kushina, you mean as in my? Naruto then rushed up to embrace her while shouting, Ka-chan. While looking at Roku, Aang remarked, but I thought that the Avatar spirit only went on to the next Avatar after the previous one had died. And that Avatar would need to have been born just after the previous one died. However, Kushina responded to him as she and her son ended their embrace. That's true, but the reason Naruto became the Avatar is that when Minato, Naruto's father, sealed Kyuubi inside of Naruto, he sealed some of his own chakra into him as well, so that if the seal were to weaken to the point where Naruto would sprout the 8th tail, he'd come and repair the seal. He also put some of my chakra into the seal so that when Naruto would try and take control over the beast's chakra, I'd be there to guide him, Kushina clarified. But that still doesn't explain how I'm the Avatar, Naruto replied. When my chakra was sealed inside you, I was still alive. So what do you think happened to the avatar spirit? Asked Kushina. Kushina nodded, and Naruto speculated, it followed you? The solstice is ending, we must go our separate ways, for now, Roku stated. What? But I just met Chan for the first time, can't we get a little more time? Replied Naruto. Before he and the others closed their eyes and everyone heard Roku's voice in their minds, he said, don't worry, she is a part of you. When you need to talk to her, you can just enter your mindscape, like any Jinchuriki should be able to. A great danger awaits you at the temple, Roku said. While he was saying this, they saw Zhao and his men standing outside the room. Naruto's whisker marks and Aang's arrow began to glow blue, and when they opened their eyes, they discovered that they were also glowing blue. We can help you face the threat, but only if you are ready. At the same time, they declared, we're ready. Beyond the sanctuary before the big gate opened and a dazzling blue light emerged from the sanctuary, the door was glowing blue and the fire benders were ready. Zhao said, ready, as a pair of glowing eyes emerged from the fading light. No, Aang.kun, exclaimed Katara. Naruto, exclaimed Sakura. Zhao cried out, fire, and then he and the other fire benders started shooting at the person inside, engulfing him in flames. But when they noticed that it was Avatar Roku standing there, they were taken aback. Shyu exclaimed, Avatar Roku. Sama. Before Roku threw the fire back at the fire benders, causing them to fall and melting the chains that held them all to the statues as Zuko fled. Kakashi remarked, told you so. His eyes widened as Kushina emerged from behind Roku, her eyes and long hair both glowing. Abruptly, chains emerged from her body and passed through each statue, causing them to fall to the ground. Then, chains erupted from the ground, catching a number of fire benders as they began to run for their lives. We've got to get out of here, Avatar Roku and Kushina. San's going to destroy the temple, Kakashi responded. Just before Roku slammed his arm downward, causing some of the floor to melt and create a fissure, Sakura exclaimed, not without Naruto and Aang.san. He then caused the lava below to shoot upward, straight through the tower, and then fall back down. However, Roku and Kushina disappeared as the solstice came to an end, revealing the forms of Aang and Naruto, who collapsed to their knees as the others rushed to them. As Sasuke and Sakura assisted Naruto, Sokka and Katara helped Aang up, saying, we've got your back. Before Sasuke and Sakura released Naruto to walk alone, he said, don't worry, I'm fine. Then he noticed something and asked, where's Shyu.san? According to Sasuke, I don't know. When they arrived at the stairs, they discovered that they were covered in lava. However, as they ran toward the hole the great Sage had previously made in the wall, they saw Momo and Appa flying in their direction. Before the temple detonated, they leapt onto the sky bison and took off. The ship of Zhao Zhao turned to face the fire sages and exclaimed, no prince, no avatar. Apparently, the only thing I do have is 5 traitors. The great Sage remarked, but commander, only Shyu helped the avatar. Zhao remarked, take them to the prison hall, before turning around and leaving. Save your stories for the fire. Lord, as far as I'm concerned, you're all guilty. Over a mountain range, Appa flew through the air. At the moment, Naruto was at the helm with Momo perched on his shoulder. Sasuke was in the rear of the saddle, studying a scroll featuring Kaden jutsus. Kakashi was sitting beside him, studying the map. Sakura, Katara, and Sokka were seated in the center of the saddle, and Aang was pacing restlessly. While looking up from the scroll, Sasuke exclaimed, would you stop that? You're breaking my concentration. He's right, if we hit a bump, you'll go flying off. What's bugging you anyway? Sokka replied. Kurama no Kyuubi. That was sarcasm, by the way. Yes, because we all know that there are a lot of bumps in the air. It's what Avatar Roku said. I'm supposed to master all 4 elements before that comet arrives, Aang replied. Well, let's see. You pretty much mastered air bending, and that only took you 112 years. I'm sure you can master 3 more elements by next summer, Sokka replied. We haven't even started water bending, and we're weeks away from the North Pole. What are we gonna do? Aang replied. Hey, don't worry, Aang.san. There's two of us, remember? Naruto said as he rubbed Momo's. I doubt that we'll even need to master the other elements in order to beat the fire Lord. And besides, we've got plenty of friends who can help us. Plus, if we conclude that we can't make it by summer's end, we could just learn the basics of each element, then somehow go to the future and train there instead. If we do that, we'd have plenty of time. Datbeo. As Aang sat down, Katara remarked, that'd be a good idea, and in the meantime, I could try and teach you some of the stuff I know. Katara nodded in response to Aang's question, you'd do that? Before looking down from the saddle to see if she could find a river, Katara stated, we'd need to find a good source of water first. Maybe we can find a puddle for you to splash in, Sokka replied. Valley, Earth. Kingdom. The group was standing in a valley with a small river formed by a waterfall at its end. As Katara, Sakura, Aang, and Naruto gazed at it with smiles, Sokka remarked, nice puddle. The big bison then rolled around on his back after Appa swooped down and landed in the river, splattering some water on Momo, who was perched on a nearby rock. Yeah, don't start without me, boy, exclaimed Aang after he had undressed. Katara said, remember the reason we're here. Aang put on his pants after saying, oh, right. Time to practice water bending. Sokka said, great. So, what am I supposed to do? Picking up a twig and holding it in front of Sokka, Aang said, you could clean the gunk out of Appa's toes. So, while you guys are playing in the water, I'm supposed to be hard at work, picking mud out of a giant bison's feet? Asked Sokka. Aang said, mud and bugs. Sokka took the twig and went to Appa, saying, okay. Zuko's ship, Ocean. After one of his men ducked under a fireball that Zuko had thrown out of his fist, the prince attempted another fireball but it was blocked. Zuko and his sparring partner both lost their footing and staggered to the ship's edge as the ship abruptly leaned to starboard. Zuko exclaimed, someone's changing our course. Bridge. Zuko approached the helmsman and screamed, what's the meaning of this mutiny? No one told you to change course. Iroh, who was playing Pi Show with two other crew members at the time, stated, I assure you it is a matter of utmost importance, Prince Zuko. Actually, someone did. Zuko questioned, is it something to do with the avatars? Iroh said, even more urgent. It seems I've lost my lotus tile. He then advanced one of his pieces. Lotus tile? Inquired Zuko. As he advanced another piece, Iroh remarked, for my Pi Show game. Most people think the lotus tile is insignificant, but it is essential for the unusual strategy that I employ. You've changed our course for a stupid lotus tile? Replied Zuko. Before Zuko angrily exhaled a lot of smoke, Iroh said, see, you, like most people, underestimate its value. Just give me 10 minutes to tip the merchants at the seedy merchants pier. Hopefully they'll have the lotus tile in stock, and I can get on with my life. As smoke filled the entire bridge, Iroh remarked, I'm lucky to have such an understanding nephew. Valley, Earth. Kingdom. The bison grunted happily as Sokka used the twig that Aang had given him to scrape the mud between Appa's toes. Appa grunted again as Sokka said, yeah, don't get too happy. You've gotta do me next. While Katara was teaching the three of them some bending techniques she had created herself, Naruto, Aang, and Sakura were seated in front of her. When Katara turned to the water, she began pushing her arms forward and pulling them back in, causing the water to move in a similar manner. Just push and pull the water like this. The key is getting the rhythm movements right. The three students then got up to try it themselves. This is a pretty basic move, but it still took me months to perfect. So don't be frustrated if you don't get it right away. As he and the other two began to move in the same ways as Katara, Naruto questioned, like this. As the water bender turned to face them, she began, that's almost right. If you keep practicing, I'm sure eventually, but soon realized that all three of them were pushing and pulling their own waves. As Sakura's wave was precisely the same size as Katara's, Naruto exclaimed, hey, we're bending it already. Datbeo. Aang and he had both created waves larger than Katara's. Katara remarked, wow. I can't believe you got that so quickly. It took me 2 months to learn that move. She wasn't overly shocked by Sakura because she had already practiced water bending. She was genuinely shocked to see that Aang and Naruto, who had never bent the element before, had already mastered the move. Katara grinned as Aang remarked, Well, you had to figure it out all on your own. We're lucky enough to have a great teacher. She said, thanks. Naruto said, so, what's next, then? Katara turned to the water and used her water bending skills to create what appeared to be a whip of water emerge from the river, which she then brought to her hands. This is a more difficult move. I call it, streaming the water. Then she looked at the three and was shocked by what she saw. It's harder than it looks, so don't be disappointed if, she said. Sakura simply held the water in her hands while Aang and Naruto danced with it before returning it to the river. Katara then let the water she was holding fall back into the river. As Katara put it, nice work, though the head flare was unnecessary. Gomen, said Naruto. Aang said, well, don't stop now, keep 'em coming. Katara turned back to the water and said, well, I kind of know of this one other move, but it's pretty hard. I haven't even totally figured it out yet. The idea is to create a big powerful wave. She then raised her hands in the air and began focusing as a dome of water rose from the river and then fell back down. Aang questioned, so, like this? Before raising his hands in the air and sending a large wave down on Sokka and Appa. Aang remarked, looks like I got the hang of that move. Before turning to face Sasuke, who was standing by a tree trunk with the Uchiha's Kaden scroll resting on it, Naruto said, okay, me next. He then grinned. Then, as a huge wave came and slammed down on Sasuke, he raised his hands in the air. As Aang and Naruto were laughing together, the Uchiha yelled, Naruto, I'm gonna get you for that. Just before Naruto was struck by a large wave. Sakura exclaimed, that was for Sasuke-kun. Glancing down at the scroll, Sasuke proceeded through the displayed hand signs. When he came to the final one, he searched for a target until he saw Naruto. He shouted, grabbing the blonde's attention, hey, Naruto. Think fast. Katen. Ryuka no Jutsu. Naruto swiftly raised his hands in the air to form a wall of water that the dragon head struck with after he hurled a flame that resembled a dragon's head at him. Sakura giggled in the background as the Uchiha prodigy said, hey. Looks like we can help out each other with our training. Aang then turned to Katara. He inquired, what else do you have? Katara remarked, that's enough practicing for today. As their supplies went down the river, Sokka remarked, yeah, I'll say. You just practiced our supplies down the river. According to Aang, sorry. I'm sure we can find some way to replace all that stuff. Datbeo, said Naruto. Sokka muttered to himself, my life was hard enough when you were just an air bender. And then he dove into the water. The Shady Merchant's Pier later, a merchant port not far from the river where they had been training was traversed by Aang, Naruto with Momo on his shoulder, Katara, Sakura, Sokka, Sasuke, and Kakashi. They observed that there were a wide variety of people from all different countries there as they strolled. Later, before Sokka and Kakashi emerged from a house, Aang, Naruto, Katara, Sakura, Momo, and Sasuke waited for them to buy more supplies. We've got exactly 3 copper pieces left from the money that King Bumi-san gave us. We should spend it wisely, Kakashi responded. He held up a bison whistle and blew in it, but it didn't seem to work. Make that 2 copper pieces, Kakashi-san. I couldn't say no to this whistle. Sokka remarked, it doesn't even work. Before Aang handed him the 2 copper pieces, Naruto remarked, I think I should hold the money from now on. Docks before he saw the group, a man standing next to a ship said, Earth, Nation, Fire, Nation, Water, Nation. So long as bargains are your inclination, you're welcome here. Don't be shy, come on by. Oh. You there, I can see from your clothing that you're world traveling types. Perhaps I can interest you in some exotic curious? Aang replied, sure. What are curious? As the others followed, the man grabbed Aang and led him into the ship, saying, I'm not entirely sure. But we got him. Following their entry into the ship, they surveyed the various artifacts within. When Sakura saw a little statue of a monkey with rubies for eyes and a ruby necklace, she couldn't take her eyes off it. With Momo on his shoulder, Naruto approached and took a look at some of the goods in the room's corner. Naruto turned to see a man, most likely the ship's captain, with a reptilian bird perched on his shoulder. I've never seen such a fine specimen of lemur. Before Momo shot back and the reptilian bird screamed, he said, That beast would fetch me a heavy sum if you'd be interested in bargaining. Before Sakura and Katara spotted a shelf with several scrolls, including a water bending scroll. Sakura removed it and unrolled it. Aang had stated, "Momo's not for sale." The two avatars approached them after Katara said, "Ah, look at this, Aang.kun, Naruto.san. It's a water bending scroll. Check out these crazy moves," Sakura replied. Before the captain picked it up and rolled it, Aang asked, "Where did you get a water bending scroll?" Before placing it on the shelf, he remarked, "Let's just say I got it up north, at a most reasonable price, free." Sokka turned to face the man who had brought them in and exclaimed, "Wait a minute. See? Loving traders with suspiciously acquired merchandise? And pet reptile? Birds? You guys are pirates." "We prefer to think of ourselves as high-risk traders," the man replied. "It really took you this long to figure out that they were pirates?" replied Kakashi. Kakashi shrugged in response to Naruto's question, "Huh? When did you figure it out, Kakashi? Sensei?" Kakashi remarked, "When I first saw their ship." Sakura inquired, "So, how much for the traded scroll?" "I've already got a buyer, a noble man in the Earth Kingdom. Unless of course, you kids have 200 gold pieces on you right now," the captain replied. "What would someone from the Earth Kingdom want with a water bending scroll?" Naruto asked. "It's not my business what my customers do with what they've bought after they've bought it," the captain said. "I know how to deal with these guys. Pirates love to haggle," Aang said, and Naruto gave him the 2 copper pieces. "Watch and learn." And the bald monk walked over to the captain. "Let's say to the prize of 1 copper piece," Aang said as he held up the copper piece, and the captain started laughing. "The prize is 200 gold pieces. I don't haggle on items this rare," the captain said. "Okay. 2 copper pieces," Aang said as he held up the pieces. "It's not as amusing the second time, boy," the captain said. "Okay, guys. Let's go," Kakashi said. We be castin' off now," Aang said before they left. "Hey, what was that about, Kakashi? Sensei?" Naruto asked when they had gotten down from the ship. "Yeah. I was just starting to browse through their boomerang collection," Sokka said. "Don't worry about it. I'm sure you'll all find out about it when we get back to the camp. Sight. Right, Sakura," Kakashi said as he looked at Sakura at the end. "Hey, you. Get back here," the pirate who brought them into the ship yelled after them as he ran towards the bow of the ship. Well, look who's come to their senses. Told you the haggling would pay off," Aang said as Sakura slowly backed away and 7 of the pirates jumped down before pulling out weapons. "I don't think these pirates are here to trade with us," Katara said before they started running. "Get back here," one of the pirates yelled after them. The group ran in through an alleyway with 4 of the pirates hot on their trail as the other 3 decided to run around. The group rounded a corner and Katara noticed a bowl of water before she bended the water down on the ground and froze it to ice, making one of the pirates slide on the ice while the other 3 jumped over. The group then approached the cabbage man who had his cabbage cart in the middle of the street, and as soon as Naruto came past him, he bended a wave of wind at the cart, sending it straight at the pirates. "My cabbages. This place is worse than Omashu," the cabbage man said before walking away. "Hey, Naruto. What is it?" Sakura asked as she noticed that Naruto was looking back towards where the cabbage cart was. "Haven't we seen that guy somewhere before?" he asked as he pointed at the cabbage man. "Well, now that you mention it, wasn't he in Omashu?" Sakura said before the other 3 pirates came out of an alley in front of them and they turned around and ran the other way. "I hope that lemur of yours has 9 lives," one of the pirates said as the group ran into an alley and came to a dead end. "Now, who gets to taste the steel of my blade first?" the pirate that had led them into the ship earlier asked. "No thanks," Aang said before swinging his glider, sending a wave of dust and wind at the pirates. Then, as Aang held the glider above his head and removed its wings while yelling, "Grab on tight," the group began running in the direction of the pirates. As Katara, Sokka, and Sakura clung to the glider and Kakashi, Naruto, and Sasuke leapt to the roofs, Katara exclaimed, "Aang.kun. I thought we were running away from the pirates." As Kakashi, Naruto and Sasuke followed them on the ground. Aang said, "Just hang on." Then they flew over the pirates and fled. They returned to the valley where they were spending the night camping shortly after that. As he tucked his glider's wings away, Aang remarked, "I used to kind of look up to pirates, but those guys were terrible." Sakura held out the water, bending scroll, and said, "I know. That's why I took this." Aang said, "No way. According to Sakura, isn't it great? No wonder those pirates came after us. You stole their water." Bending scroll. Sasuke replied. Aang and Naruto chuckled when Sakura remarked, "I'd prefer to think of it as high-risk trading." Naruto remarked, "Good one, Sakura-chan." Sasuke.kun. "Where do you think they got it?" "They stole it from a water bender," Sakura responded. "It doesn't matter. You put all of our lives in danger just so you could learn some stupid fancy splashes," Sakura replied. "These are real water bending forms. You guys know how crucial it is for Naruto and Aang.san to learn water bending," said Sakura. Before leaving, Sokka said, "Whatever." Before Naruto turned to Kakashi, Aang remarked, "Well, what's done is done. We have it, we might as well learn from it." "You knew that Sakura-chan stole that scroll, didn't you, Kakashi sensei?" replied Naruto. Kakashi remarked, "It's called high-risk trading, Naruto. And yes, I was well aware of that." Sakura said, "All right, let's learn some of these moves now." The three genin followed Kakashi into the woods after he said, "Not so fast, Sakura." This statement caught everyone's attention. "Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura, you three will come with me. There's something that I should have taught you a long time ago, but we never got the time. So follow me." The shady merchants Pier Zuko and Iroh were standing at the docks back in town. "I've checked all the shops on this pier. Not a lotus tile in the entire marketplace," Iroh replied. "It's good to know this trip was a complete waste of time for everyone," said Zuko. As three men passed them, two of them carrying a lot of goods and the third a tsungi horn, Iroh remarked, "Quite the contrary. I always say the only thing better than finding something you were looking for is finding something you weren't looking at a great bargain." Zuko inquired, "You bought a tsungi horn?" Iroh said, "For music night on the ship." Then he began to walk, thinking aloud, "Now if we only had some wood weeds." Then Iroh saw the pirate ship that the Avatars group had previously been in, but he was unaware of it. He pointed to the ship and said, "Oh, this place looks promising." Within the vessel, looking at the monkey statue Sakura had earlier gazed at, Iroh remarked, "Oh, that is handsome. Wouldn't it look magnificent in the galley?" Then, most likely wanting to purchase it, he picked it up. Despite Zuko's attention, one of the pirates told the captain, "We lost the water tribe girls and the people they were traveling with." "Was one of those people a monk with an arrow on his head?" he inquired. The forest in the center of the forest were Kakashi, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura. Kakashi was standing in front of the three genins. Naruto questioned, "So what are you going to teach us, Kakashi sensei?" Kakashi grinned and said, "To climb trees." "Nani? But Kakashi sensei, we already know how to climb trees," Sakura responded. Kakashi remarked, "Oh, but this won't be like any other tree climbing." Naruto questioned, "What do you mean?" Kakashi remarked, "You see, you're not allowed to use your hands." Sasuke responded, "But that's impossible." Before he approached a tree and actually walked up its side, Kakashi said, "Oh, no, it's quite possible. Just watch." He then walked over on a branch and hung upside down, only touching the branch with the bottoms of his feet. Before Kakashi produced three kunais and hurled them at the three genins, Sakura and Naruto yelled, "Sugoi," together. As the Jonin explained, send chakra through your feet to stick to the tree, and when you fall off, use those kunais to mark your progress. Also, since you're new to the tree climbing exercise, it might be best to get a running start. Now you can choose any tree you'd like. His students promptly selected a tree and began running. Sasuke climbed a little higher up the trunk before being abruptly pushed off the tree. He was able to mark his progress with his kunai, though it wasn't necessary given that he had left a footprint in the tree from using too much chakra. "I understand," The force will push me off the tree if I use too much chakra, but if I use too little, I might not get anywhere at all, he thought. When Sasuke and Kakashi turned to face the source of the voice, they saw Naruto standing atop his tree's tallest branch. "Hey, Kakashi. Sensei, how's this?" they said. Assuming that Naruto had bended his way up, Sasuke remarked, "Naruto, you can't cheat by using air bending here." According to Naruto, "I didn't, Sasuke." It's unbelievable that Naruto made it that far without seeing Sasuke.kun. As everyone turned to face the voice, Sakura was seated atop her own tree's tallest branch. Given that he is the Avatar, it appears that Naruto has a natural talent for controlling chakras. I'm not surprised that Sakura has such good chakra control either, as she was the smartest girl in their class, Kakashi thought. The valley before picking up the scroll and handing it to Aang, Katara pointed to one of the moves and said, "Here, hold it up for me. I just want to try this one move first, and then it's all yours." Before water. Bending some water from the river and trying to hit it at the air, she said, "The single water whip. Looks doable." Sokka laughed and asked, "What's so funny?" She then struck her own forehead. Sokka turned to Aang and said, "You've been duped. She's only interested in teaching herself. I'm sorry, but deserved that." When Katara tried again, she hit Momo instead, saying, "Ugh. Why can't I get this stupid move? Aang.kun will get his turn once I figure out the water whip." Setting down the scroll, Aang said, "You'll get it." He then proceeded to the river and water. Bended some of the water, saying, "You've just got to shift through the stances." He unfailingly executed the water whip, saying, "There, see? The key to bending is." Katara shouted, "Would you please shut your air hole? Believe it or not, your infinite wisdom gets a little old sometimes. Why don't we just throw this scroll away, since you're so naturally gifted?" Before realizing that Sokka was staring at her angrily, she asked, "What?" She turned to face Aang, who was looking scared, saying, "Oh my gosh, Aang.kun. I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me, but you know what, it won't happen again." She then picked up the scroll and handed it to Aang, saying, "Here, this is yours. I don't want to have anything to do with it anymore." Aang said, "It's okay, Katara Chan." Sokka pointed to the lemur bat that was massaging his butt where Katara had struck him as she approached, saying, "What about Momo? He's the real victim here." She said, "I'm sorry, Momo." Sokka started to say, "And what about me? There was that time you," but Katara interrupted him. She shouted, "No more apologies," as Momo leapt to her feet. The river. The pirates were unaware that Zuko had boarded a boat to accompany the pirate captain and his crew in their search for the avatars. The captain said, "Shouldn't we stop to search the woods?" "We don't need to stop. They stole a water bending scroll, right? Then they'll be on the water," Zuko replied. The Avatar camp, with the exception of Kakashi, who was sitting by a tree and appeared to be asleep. Everyone at the Avatar's camp had gone into their sleeping bags and was soundly asleep. After volunteering to be the first night watch, Katara made sure that everyone was asleep before sneaking over to the bag containing the water bending scroll and leaving, but she was abruptly confronted by Momo. Before continuing, Katara muttered, "Shish, Momo, go back to sleep." She was unaware, though, that Kakashi was also awake and had been observing the girl at all times. The river. In her frustration, Katara attempted to manipulate the stream of water that had protruded from the river's surface, but her efforts were unsuccessful, and she allowed it to fall back into the water. Before pulling a ball of water from the river and forming it into a whip and attempting to hit the air with it, she said, "Shoot. Come on, water, work with me here. Ow. Stupid scroll." She was unaware, however, that Zuko's men and the pirates were traveling down the river not far from her location, and they had heard her. Before the water fell, she said, "Okay, Katara. Shift your way through the stances." She heard something and glanced through the bushes to discover Zuko's boat had parked on the beach. Then, in an attempt to flee, she turned around and ran, but she collided with one of the pirates. The pirate then grabbed her as she attempted to flee. She yelled, "No, let go of me," before directing a stream of water to strike the pirate in the face. She tried to flee once more but was stopped by Zuko, who took hold of her arms. He said, "I'll protect you from the pirates." Katara was bounded to a tree shortly after, with Zuko, Iroh, their men, and the pirates standing in front of her. "Tell me where they are, and I won't hurt you, your brother or the other three," Zuko replied. Katara shouted, "Go jump in the river," and Zuko approached her. He held Katara's necklace up in front of her neck and said, "Try to understand. I need to capture him to restore something I've lost. My honor. Perhaps in exchange I can restore something you've lost." As Zuko began to leave with the necklace, Katara exclaimed, "My mother's necklace. How did you get that?" she asked. Zuko gestured to Katara and said, "If you're wondering, tell me where they are. I didn't steal it." "No," exclaimed Katara. The pirate captain exclaimed, "Enough of this necklace garbage. You promised us the scroll." Zuko then raised the scroll and placed his right hand beneath it, causing a flame to flare over his palm. "I wonder how much money this is worth," he replied. "No," exclaimed the pirate captain. "A lot, apparently. Now you help me find what I want, you'll get this back and everyone goes home happy. Search the woods for the monk and the blonde, and meet back here," Zuko replied. Before leaving, the pirate captain said, "Fine." The Avatar camp. When Sokka woke up first, he saw right away that his sister's sleeping bag was empty. He then held the bag the scroll should have been in and emptied it, asking, "Huh? Where did she go?" As he and the others awoke, Naruto said, "Yan, what's wrong?" "She took the scroll. She's obsessed with that thing. It's just a matter of time before she gets us all in deep." The teenager was sent forward, down on the ground, before he could finish, when a rope with a stone at the end wrapped itself around his wrists. A pirate had discovered them and was using a rope with a stone at the end to attack them. The water tribe warrior then rolled out of the way, grabbed his club, and ran in the direction of the pirate as he sent the stone falling in Sokka's direction. After that, Sasuke performed a number of hand signals, but before he could use the jutsu, he was abruptly entangled in a net, fell to the ground, and was taken away by one of the pirates. Sakura shouted, "Sasuke-kun," but she was also ensnared in a net. Naruto exclaimed, "Ah, Sakura-chan." Before turning to face the location of the nets, he saw a pirate with 2 crossbows, firing 1 arrow from each, and the net containing the arrows caught him as another net passed over Aang and the pirates fled. Before a net hit him as well, Sokka said, "Oh, what, I'm not good enough to kidnap." The river Iroh arched an eyebrow when he noticed that Kakashi was absent, which wasn't good, but shortly after that, the pirates brought the 5 children before Zuko and his men. Since Kakashi was by far the group's strongest and most seasoned member, his absence suggests that he was attempting to devise a strategy for saving the others. Zuko walked over to the pirates with the scroll and said, "Nice work." Katara remarked, "Aang.kun, Naruto.san, this is all my fault." Aang responded, "No Katara-chan, it isn't." Iroh responded, "Yeah, it kind of is." Sasuke remarked, "He's got a point there. Give me the boys," Zuko insisted. "According to the pirate captain, you give us the scroll. You're really gonna hand over the Avatar for some stupid scroll?" asked Sasuke. After Zuko said, "Don't listen to him. He's trying to turn us against each other," the pirate captain turned to face Naruto. He questioned, "This is the Avatar?" When Sasuke revealed that Naruto was the Avatar, Sokka realized what he was trying to do and said, "Sure is. And I'll bet that he'll fetch a lot more on the black market than that fancy scroll." Zuko shouted, "Shut your mouth, you water tribe peasant." "Yeah, Sokka.san. You really should shut your mouth," Aang replied. "Yeah, just imagine how much the Fire Lord would pay for the Avatar. You guys would be set for life," Sakura replied. As the other pirates seized the children and trailed him to their ship, the pirate captain said, "Keep the scroll. We can get 100 with the reward we'll get for the kid." He then turned around and left. Zuko exclaimed, "You'll regret breaking a deal with me," before he and 2 of his men each launched a single fireball at the pirates, who leapt aside just before the balls struck the ground. Then, one of the pirates ran toward the fire. Benders holding smoke bombs, hurled the bombs at their feet, and leapt into the smokescreen that the bombs created. When they saw that 3 of Zuko's unyielding soldiers were running in their direction, Sasuke, Sakura, and Naruto quickly untied their ropes without using any jutsu before assisting Aang and Sokka with their ropes. The 3 soldiers were pulled into the smoke as 4 of the pirates approached them and then threw smoke bombs onto the ground, forming a smokescreen. As Katara's ropes suddenly relaxed, she noticed Kakashi standing there with Momo on his shoulder and a finger in front of his mouth to signal for her to keep quiet. Before he could put the scroll under his belt, Zuko was pushed out of the smoke screen he was in. He turned around in time to avoid the pirate captain's sword slash. Then a ball of fire erupted from the prince's hand, and Zuko tried a palm strike, which the pirate captain blocked with his sword. The prince then tried to kick, but a fireball blasted out of his foot, blocking it as well. When the pirate captain thrust his sword forward, Zuko ducked out of the way and threw the back of his arm at him while the arm was on fire. However, the pirate captain was able to block it with his sword and seized Zuko's wrist at the same time that the prince did. Then a stone-tipped rope appeared, wrapped itself around the scroll, and was drawn back to the pirate who had thrown it. But before the reptilian bird saw the flying lemur and pursued him, Momo swooped down and snatched the scroll before the pirate could. The lemur dropped the scroll directly into the smoke screen nearest the ship after the reptilian bird collided with Momo. Sakura and Sokka were separated from the others inside the smokescreen. Sokka shouted, "Aang-san, Naruto-san, Sasuke-san. Are you there?" As he leapt up and then fell again, Aang said, "We're over here, follow my voice." Sakura exclaimed, "Where? We can't find you," before using air bending to remove the smoke surrounding them. Naruto shouted, "We're right here." However, the three of them were encircled by Zuko's men and pirates on all sides, so Naruto brought the smoke back to hide them. "Never mind," he said. Naruto, Aang, and Sasuke emerged over the smokescreen shortly after Sokka and Sakura managed to crawl out. Aang exclaimed, "Run!" before he and the other two hit the ground and dashed in the direction of the pirate ship, where Katara and Kakashi were attempting to force it out onto the water. Naruto exclaimed, "Kakashi! Sensei, Katara-san," as he and the others approached them. Everyone tried pushing the ship before giving up when Katara said, "Help us get this boat out on the water so we can get out of here." "We need a team of rhinos to budge this ship," Sokka replied. Before he, Aang, Sakura, and Katara started to bend the water so that it came up on the beach and lifted the ship off the beach, Naruto remarked, "A team of rhinos, or 4 water benders." Kakashi said, "Everyone, get on," with the pirate captain and Zuko. Before extinguishing the fire knives and launching a stream of fire at the pirate, Zuko, holding a fire knife in each hand, ducked beneath the pirate captain's sword. However, the pirate evaded it and moved behind the prince. But before he could hit Zuko, Iroh stopped the fight by grabbing both Zuko's hair and the pirate's arm. Iroh turned to the pirate captain and asked, "Are you so busy fighting, you cannot see your own ship has set sail?" Zuko turned around. "We have no time for your verbs, uncle," he screamed. Iroh pointed to the pirate ship that was presently cruising the river and remarked, "It's no verb." Zuko laughed as the pirate captain exclaimed, "Bleeding hog. Monkeys," and fled after his ship. Then he saw that his boat had been taken by the pirates. While running after them, he exclaimed, "Hey, that's my boat." Iroh said aloud, "Perhaps it ought to be a proverb." Zuko exclaimed, "Come on uncle," and Iroh trailed behind. With the group of avatars when Naruto noticed that they were being pursued, he said, "Sokka-san, can't you make this ship go any faster?" Before the pirates arrived and leapt to the ship, Sokka remarked, "I don't know how. This thing wasn't made by the water tribe." After Naruto bent a wave over the ship's deck, one of the 2 pirates went overboard while the other got back up on his feet. 2 of the pirates were approaching Katara and Sakura. The pirate was also thrown overboard when Katara struck him with a whip she had made by bending some water. Aang exclaimed, "Hey, you did the water whip." The statement, "I couldn't have done it without your help," was made by Katara. Sasuke kicked a pirate who had tried to attack Sokka, sending him flying, and then Uchiha turned to face another pirate while he performed a series of hand signals. After saying, "Kaden, Ryuka no Jutsu," he shot a dragon-headed ball of fire in the direction of the pirate, who retreated slightly before tripping over the ship's edge and plummeting into the water. The lemur bat flew up as the reptile bird pursued him, then down again until they were just above the water's surface. Momo, who was being pursued by the reptile bird, flew over the ship before crossing the water. The reptilian bird then followed Momo as he flew up towards one of the pirate ship's sails and climbed up. Then they approached the flag and circled the top of the flagpole once before Momo used his feet to grab the flag and encircle the reptilian bird, trapping him. Everyone turned to look at the waterfall where the ship was going after Kakashi said, "We've got a small problem up ahead." Aang pulled out the bison whistle and blew in it after saying, "Oh, no. Have you lost your mind? This is no time for flute practice," Sokka replied. As the four water benders began pushing and pulling the water to turn the ship around, Sakura exclaimed, "We can stop the boat." Naruto, Aang.san, Katara.san together push and pull the water. Katara exclaimed, "It's working. It's slowing down," as the ship started to circle before coming to a complete stop. "We're doing it," exclaimed Sakura. As the pirates' boat approached them, Sasuke remarked, "But we have another problem." They all went over the waterfall after the boat collided with the pirate ship, but Appa arrived and the group landed in his saddle while the pirates descended to the waterfall's base. Aang looked at the bison whistle and said, "I knew a bison whistle would come in handy." As Momo landed on Naruto's shoulder, Aang turned to the bison and said, "Thanks, Appa." Appa grunted as Sokka said, "Yeah, we owe you one." On top of the waterfall when Zuko and Iroh reached the waterfall, Zuko turned to face the river below, where his boat and the pirate ship had collided. He exclaimed, "My boat," before Iroh grabbed him by the arms and inserted his hands into the sleeve of the other arm. Iroh pulled out the round game piece and said, "Heh heh. Prince Zuko.san. You're really going to get a kick out of this. The lotus tile was in my sleeve the whole time." Zuko then took it and threw it down, hitting one of the pirates in the head. "Appa, Sky, Aang.kun, I still owe you an apology. You were just so good with water bending without really trying. I got so competitive that I put us all in danger. I'm sorry," Katara responded. Aang said, "That's okay, Katara Chan." Sakura remarked, "Who needs that stupid scroll anyway?" Kakashi held up the scroll in front of them and asked, "Is that really how you feel?" Sakura exclaimed, "The scroll," before attempting to seize it, but Kakashi stopped her with a raised hand. He inquired, "First, what did you learn?" Sakura said, "Stealing is wrong." Kakashi then gave her the scroll, which she accepted with pleasure, and added, "Unless it's from pirates." This made Aang and Naruto chuckle. Naruto remarked, "Good one, Sakura Chan." When an insect crossed a tree branch, Momo appeared out of nowhere and tried to capture it. However, the bug was able to escape just in time, and Momo chased it up the tree before it turned around and flew back towards the ground. The bug then landed before Momo could descend, but it escaped once more, and as he was about to pursue it, he spotted some nuts on the ground. Then, as he leapt for the nuts, he was immediately ensnared in a cage and dangling from a tree close to two other cages that contained trapped hog monkeys. Alongside the group before they heard Momo's cry, Naruto noticed that his pet was gone and asked, "Hey, where's Momo?" Naruto used air bending to launch himself into the air and land on the side of a tree. He then ran up the tree until he reached the branch that Momo's cage was hanging from, loosened the rope, and lowered the cage shortly after the group of 7 arrived at the location where Momo was. Momo leapt out of the cage when Sakura and Katara opened it when it reached the ground, then proceeded to eat a nut. The two hog monkeys groaned as Naruto touched down, clearly unhappy that Momo was the only one released. Before leaping to his feet, Naruto said, "All right, you two." Sasuke remarked, "This is going to take forever." He then threw 2 shuriken, and as the ropes were severed, both cages collapsed before Naruto could get to them. He slid down the tree after saying, "That works." Sokka looked at one of the cages. "These are fire nation traps. You can tell from the metal work. We'd better pack up camp and get moving," he replied. They had just completed packing everything and were loading it onto Appa. Sokka said, No flying this time." Naruto said, "Nani? Why wouldn't we fly? Think about it. Somehow Prince Zuko and the Fire Nation keep finding us. It's because they spot Appa. He's just too noticeable," Sokka replied. Katara exclaimed, "What? Appa's not too noticeable." Sokka exclaimed, "He's a huge fluffy monster with an arrow on his head. It's kind of hard not to miss him," with a grunt from Appa. Sokka Sans just jealous because he doesn't have an arrow, Aang replied. I know you all want to fly, but my instincts tell me, we should play it safe this time, and walk, Sokka replied. Katara questioned, who made you the boss? Kakashi nodded in agreement as Sasuke stated, actually, he's got a point. According to the silver-haired Jonin, yes, I think we should walk for a change, and I think we should have Sokka-san and his instincts lead the way. Aang remarked, who knows? Walking might be fun. Afterwards, after a few minutes of walking, Aang exclaimed, walking stinks. How do people go anywhere without a sky? Bison. Well, I don't know Aang-san. Why don't you ask Sokka? Sans instincts? They seem to know everything, Sakura replied. Sokka remarked, ha ha. Very funny. Naruto remarked, I'm tired of carrying this pack. You know, who you should ask to carry it for a while? Sokka.ni. Sans instincts, Katara replied. Naruto exclaimed, that's a great idea, before turning to face Sokka. Hey, Sokka. Sans instincts, would you mind? But Sokka interrupted him. Sasuke approached Sokka and held up his Kaden scroll after he said, okay, I get it. Hey, Sokka's instincts, mind watching over this for a while? He inquired. As they passed some bushes and entered a fire nation camp, Sokka remarked, look guys, I'm tired too, but the important thing is that we're safe from the fire nation. Sokka shouted, run, as they dismounted their packs and began to run, but the fire nation troops captain threw a fireball past them, striking the bushes and setting them on fire. When Naruto saw that Sokka's left sleeve was on fire, he cried out, Sokka-san, your shirt? Katara then grabbed some water from her water-bending pouch and sprayed Sokka's arm with it before returning the water. Then they looked around and saw that they were surrounded by fire nation troops. If you let us pass, we promise not to hurt you, Sokka replied. In a whisper, Katara said, what are you doing? Sokka returned the whisper, bluffing. The captain questioned, you promise not to hurt us? Before he was struck in the back and went down. Naruto said, niece, Kakashi. Sensei, how did you do that? According to Kakashi, I didn't. Sakura exclaimed, looked, and gestured up to a tree branch where a boy who couldn't have been much older than them was standing. The boy then pulled out two swords, leapt behind the branch, swung forward with his swords, and landed on two fire nation soldiers, knocking them to the ground. Then he dashed forward, snatched two other fire nation soldiers by the legs with his swords, and threw them at the fallen captain. The group stared at the boy, wondering who he was, and he said, down you go. Before a fire nation soldier approached from behind and tried to hit the boy, Naruto uttered the words, Sugoi. The boy simply turned around, blocked his sword, and threw him away. One of the fire nation soldiers exclaimed, they're in the trees. And then a young boy landed on his shoulders, spun his helmet around, and began to ride him. Then, as they looked up, they saw a boy sitting on a tree branch with a bow and arrow after arrows suddenly flew down and knocked the swords out of the hands of several fire nation troops. Two more soldiers were disarmed by the boy's simultaneous firing of two arrows. Then another boy leapt from a tree and squatted down, causing a soldier who was rushing at him to topple over him. The soldier was sent straight up to a tree branch after the boy leapt to his feet. The boy then grabbed the soldier's arm and threw him away as another soldier charged at him. Then a girl landed and charged forward, her dagger in a reverse grip. While Sasuke and Kakashi performed a series of hand signals and Naruto and Aang employed air bending, Katara and Sakura bended some water at the fire nation troops. Sasuke yelled, Kaden, Gukakyo no Jutsu, and the fireball was launched directly at a few fire nation soldiers. Kakashi yelled, Raiden, Jabashi, and several soldiers were shocked beyond belief. The boy with the swords kicked the fire nation soldier away as Sokka, holding a boomerang, was ready to strike him. Sokka added, hey, he was mine. Before charging at another soldier, the boy said, you've got to be faster next time. When a big man appeared behind two fire nation soldiers who had retreated, they turned around and brandished their swords. The man then slammed a piece of wood down after grabbing it from his back. After backing away and examining their swords, which were bent in multiple places, the two soldiers threw them away and fled. The boy then tried to sneak up on the fire nation soldier with the hook swords and thrust his spear forward, but the soldier was knocked out before the spear struck another soldier in the back of the head. The boy grabbed the spear and quickly turned around in a full circle. Sokka exclaimed, "Man," because he had wanted to murder that man. Then, a second soldier with a spear approached from behind and pushed his spear forward, but the boy deflected it by allowing it to pass through a tiny gap between the handle of the sword and a guard that was likely there to shield his fingers. The boy then let the full spear pass through before they both turned around. The soldier then threw the spear at the boy, who grabbed it just behind the tip with his hook swords and pushed it to the ground. The boy then ran over the spear and the soldier as the latter fell, landing on the ground before he ran a short distance before stopping in front of Sakura because of the momentum. He said, "Hey." Sakura said, "Hi." Then, as the fire nation troops fled, they both turned to face the camp. As he and the others approached them, Aang remarked, "You just took out a whole army single-handed." As the boy strode forward, Sokka exclaimed, "Army? PFF'd. There were only like 20 guys," before turning around. The boy, now known as Jet, declared, "My name is Jet, and these are my freedom fighters. Sneers, Longshot, Smeller B, the Duke, and Pipsqueak." As he approached the spot where the Duke and Pipsqueak, the smallest and tallest of them, respectively, were standing, Aang remarked, "Heh heh. Pipsqueak. That's a funny name." He then peered down at the smaller one. With a seemingly menacing gaze, Pipsqueak asked the young avatar, "You think my name is funny?" Aang declared, "It's hilarious," before the Duke, Pipsqueak, and he all burst out laughing. Afterwards, as she and Katara approached Jet, Sakura remarked, Thanks for saving us, Jet.san. We're lucky you were there. I should be thanking you. We were waiting to ambush those soldiers all morning, we just needed the right distraction. And then you guys stumbled in," Jet replied. With a sidelong glance at Sokka, Katara remarked, "We were relying on instincts." Jet said, "You'll get yourself killed doing that." Sokka left as the Duke and Pipsqueak gazed into a barrel. The Duke sniffed on the barrel and brought his finger down and back up again because the tip was covered in a yellow, sticky substance. "Hey, Jet.san. These barrels are filled with blasting jelly," he exclaimed. Jet remarked, "That's a great score." Pipsqueak then picked up a big box. "And these boxes are filled with jelly candy," he continued. As they began to load the spoils onto a cart, Jet remarked, "Also good. Let's not get those mixed up." The Duke said, "Let's take this stuff back to the hideout." Aang inquired, "You guys have a hideout?" Jet said, "You want to see it?" Sakura replied, "Yes, we want to see it. Ground and freedom fighter hideout." They stopped by a tree, and Jet said, "We're here." Sokka said, "Where?" "There's nothing here." As he reached for a rope and gave it to Sokka, who accepted it, Jet said, "Hold this." He questioned, "Why? What's this do?" Before the rope abruptly shot into the air, carrying him along with it. Jet said, "Naruto.san," and extended the rope to him. Before he and Aang leapt to their feet using air bending, Naruto remarked, "Me and Aang.san can get up on our own." Before he, Sasuke, and Sakura ran up the tree, Kakashi remarked, "We can get up on our own as well." As he extended his hand and Katara accepted it, Jet said, "Grab a hold of me, Katara. Chan." Katara blushed at the intimate touch as they gradually ascended. Trees and the hideout of freedom fighters. Naruto yelled, "Sugoi," as he surveyed the hideout, which was completely surrounded by trees, some of which were quite tall. When he saw Jet and Katara appeared, he remarked, "This is a nice place you've got, Jet.san." Sakura replied, "Yeah, it's beautiful up here. It's beautiful. And more importantly, the fire nation can't find us," Jet replied. Smeller B said, "They'd love to find you, wouldn't they, Jet.san?" as she emerged. Before they actually began to walk, Jet said, "It's not gonna happen, Smeller B." Katara questioned, "Why is the fire nation trying to locate you?" "I guess you could say, I've been causing them a little trouble. See, they took over a nearby Earth Kingdom town a few years back," Jet replied. "We've been ambushing their troops, cutting off their supply lines, and doing anything we can to mess with them," Pipsqueak replied. One day we'll drive the fire nation out of here for good, and free that town, Jed replied. According to Sakura, that's so brave. Yeah, nothing's braver than a guy in a tree house, Sokka replied. Katara remarked, don't listen to my brother. No problem, he probably had a rough day, Jed replied. Sakura inquired, do you all live here? That's right. Longshot over there, his town got burned down by the fire nation. And we found the Duke trying to steal our food. I don't think he ever really had a home, Jed replied. When Sakura said, what about you? Jet halted his stride. Sasuke's attention was briefly drawn to Jet's statement, the fire nation killed my parents. I was only 8 years old. That day changed me forever. Katara stated, Sokka and I lost our mother to the fire nation. Jet said, I'm so sorry, Katara-chan, afterwards. Everyone was seated around a table with food on it in the evening. All of the freedom fighters cheered when Jet stood up on the table and said, today, we struck another blow against the fire nation swine. He went on to say, I got a special joy from the look on one soldier's face when the Duke dropped down on his helmet and rode him like a wild hog. Monkey. The Duke then got up on the table and walked around, holding his arms up triumphantly, while everyone cheered. Jet went on, now, the fire nation thinks they don't have to worry about a couple of kids hiding in the trees. Maybe they're right, the other freedom fighters began jeering, or maybe, they're dead wrong. As Jet took a seat between her and Katara, Sakura said, hey, Jet.san. Nice speech. Thanks. By the way, I was really impressed with you guys. That was some great bending I saw out there today, Jet replied. Well, it's Naruto and Aang.san who's great, they're the avatars, we could use some more training. Sakura responded. Wait, avatars? What do you mean, aren't there only one? Jet responded. Yes, there are. But me, Sakura, Chan, Sasuke and Kakashi. Sensei came from the future, Naruto replied. Jet looked at Sasuke and said, future, huh, very nice. So, I suppose that's how you can have a fire bender in your group, huh? Jet asked. Actually, Sasuke isn't a fire bender. We don't know what element he belongs to, really. What you saw back there was a ninjutsu, Naruto replied. Ninjutsu? Inquired Jet. Before forming the Cage Bunshin hand sign and a flawless clone of him appeared, shocking everyone, Kakashi explained. About 2.000 years prior to our own time, the art of bending was lost, and replaced with the more modern ninjutsu. Of course, not everyone can wield ninjutsu. First they need to learn to control an internal energy called chakra, and we use hand signs to help concentrate on the techniques we want to do. Let me give you an example. This is called Cage Bunshin no Jutsu. It's a technique where I can split my chakra in two to create a perfect double. Of course it's not only limited to just one clone, though I can only create a maximum of 20 clones. The silver-haired Jonin stated this and kept going. The ninjutsu that Sasuke used during the battle was an elemental jutsu. Jet questioned, elemental jutsu? In our time, we have 5 main elements instead of 4. And those elements are fire, wind, lightning, earth and water. Also we are not limited to just one element, even though most people are born with only one affinity. It is possible for one to learn techniques of the other elements, but it's impossible to learn all 5. Also some people are born with 2 elemental affinities, and they can combine those into a new element, though that would be impossible for one who's not born with those 2 affinities. Kakashi clarified. Naruto remarked, Sugoi. I didn't know that. Among the sub-elements there are ice, which is created from the combination of water and wind, and wood, created from the combination of water and earth. There's also lava which comes from combining fire and earth. The different sub-elements can also be referred to as Kekkei Genkei, which is a special technique that can only be inherited through blood relations. Kakashi explained. Kakashi nodded, and Jet speculated, so, I suppose that Sasuke.san has a fire affinity, right? That's right, and I have lightning affinity, though I have learned techniques of the water, earth and fire elements as well. Kakashi replied. I see. By the way, I might know a way that Sakura, Chan, Katara, Chan, Naruto.san and Aang.san can help in our struggle, Jet replied. Sokka got up and began to leave, saying, "Unfortunately, we have to leave tonight." Sokka stopped and turned around when Jet said, "Sokka-san, you're kidding me. I needed you and Sasuke-san on an important mission tomorrow." He questioned, "What mission?" "Trees, a forest road," the following day. When Jet whistled some sounds that sounded like bird sounds the next day, Sokka and Sasuke hid in the trees above a forest road. Smeller B whistled back, and Sokka then stabbed the tree with a jaw bone dagger. Before the water tribe warrior touched the dagger to his ear, Jet questioned, "What are you doing?" Sokka stated, "Shish. It amplifies vibrations." Jet remarked, "Good trick." Sokka listened and said, "Nothing yet." Then he heard someone say, "Wait, yes, someone's approaching." "How many?" inquired Jet. Before Jet gestured to the others, Sokka remarked, "I think there's just one." Before he and Sasuke realized it was only an elderly man, Sokka withdrew the dagger and said, "Good work, Sokka-san. Ready your weapon." Before Jet abruptly leapt to the ground, Sasuke remarked, "False alarm. He's just an old man." "What are you doing in our woods, you leech?" Jet responded. The elderly man said, "Please, sir. I'm just a traveler." Jet then swung his right sword, knocking the man's walking stick flying. The elderly man then attempted to flee, but he collided with Pipsqueak and collapsed to the ground. Pipsqueak then put his foot down on the old man's back to stop him from crawling away. As Smeller B approached Pipsqueak from behind, Jet questioned, "Do you like destroying towns? Do you like destroying families? Do you?" The elderly man begged, "No please, let me go, have mercy." Before kicking to man, Jet questioned, "Does the Fire Nation let people go? Does the Fire Nation have mercy?" Sokka's club abruptly caught his foot. Sokka exclaimed, "Jet, he's just an old man," before Jet turned around. Jet told his two subordinates, "He's Fire Nation. Search him," and they went to look for the man. Sokka remarked, "But he's not hurting anyone. Have you forgotten that the Fire Nation killed your mother? Remember why you fight?" Jet screamed. Smeller B exclaimed, "We got his stuff, Jet-san." Sokka exclaimed, "This doesn't feel right." Jet said, "It's what has to be done. Now let's get out of here." Sokka turned back to the elderly man as he, Smeller B, and Pipsqueak walked back towards the hideout. As Sasuke passed the trees, Jet exclaimed, "Come on, Sokka-san. Sasuke-san." Sokka retreated a short distance before turning around and trailing the others. Trees and a freedom fighter hideout later, Aang, Naruto, and Momo descended and landed next to Sokka, who was sitting by one of the trees in the hideout. Aang pulled a small explosive out of his pouch and threw it at Momo, who leapt out of the way as it exploded, saying, "Sokka-san, look what the Duke gave us." Naruto hurled Aang into the tree with a little wind, shouting, "Hey, leave Momo alone." Then, from a higher level of the tree, Katara and Sakura descended. Katara said, "Hey, Sokka-san, is Jet-san back?" Sokka responded, "Yeah, he's back, but we're leaving." "Nani?" inquired Naruto. Sakura pulled a hat from behind her and remarked, "But we made him this hat." Everyone turned to see Sasuke standing on a nearby branch and exclaimed, "He's a thug." Katara said, "What? No he's not. What Sokka said was, he's messed up." Sakura turned to face Katara and asked, "He's not messed up, is he?" "Of course not. He's just got a different way of life," Katara replied. Aang promptly corrected her, saying, "A really fun way of life." Sasuke claimed, "He robbed and beat a harmless old man." Katara remarked, "I want to hear Jet-san's side of the story." Jet's cabin after they confronted him, Jet questioned, "Sokka-san, Sasuke-san, you told them what happened, but you didn't mention that the guy was Fire Nation." Sakura looked at Sasuke and Sokka, but mostly at Sokka, and said, "No, they conveniently left that part out." "Fine. But even if he was Fire Nation, he was a harmless civilian," Sokka replied. "He was an assassin, Sokka-san," Jet said as he took out a weapon. "See, there's a compartment for poison in the knife. He was sent to eliminate me. You helped save my life, Sokka-san." Katara remarked, "I knew there was an explanation." Sokka remarked, "I didn't see any knife. That's because he was concealing it," Jet replied. Sakura turned to Sokka and said, "See, Sokka-san, I'm sure you just didn't notice the knife." Before departing, he exclaimed, "There was no knife, I'm going back to the hut and pack my things." The blonde turned to face Sasuke, who made eye contact with him to see that his Sharingan was active. Naruto searched Sasuke's eyes for any indication that Jet had been telling the truth, but Sasuke's gaze made it clear to the blonde avatar that Jet had been lying. As Sasuke stepped out of the hut, Jet got up and said, "Tell me you guys aren't leaving yet. I really need your help." Aang said, "What can we do?" "The fire. Nation is planning on burning down our forest. If the four of you use water bending to fill the reservoir, we can fight the fires. But if you leave now, they'll destroy the whole valley," Jet stated. Alongside Sasuke, Kakashi was reading his book while leaning against the tree when Sasuke emerged from the hut. "Hello, Sasuke. I see you're back. How was the mission?" replied Kakashi. Sasuke ignored Kakashi's question and remarked, "We need to get out of here as soon as we can." "Yeah, I know. I heard everything, but I think it'd be best for us to stay for a little while longer," Kakashi responded. "And why's that?" inquired Sasuke. The hut of the group. As Katara, Sakura, Aang, and Naruto entered the hut, Sokka was occupied packing his belongings. "We can't leave now with the fire. Nation about to burn down a forest," Katara exclaimed. "I'm sorry, Katara. Imoto. Jet's very smooth, but we can't trust him," Sokka replied. "You're just jealous that he's a better warrior than you," said Sakura. When Sokka began to say, "Sakura-san, I'm not jealous of Jet. It's just that my instincts," Katara interrupted. She exclaimed, "Well, my instincts tell me we need to stay here a little longer and help Jet-san, before leaving," adding, "Come on guys." Sakura, Naruto, and Aang followed Katara, saying, "Sorry, Sokka-san." However, Sokka saw that Naruto had dropped a curled slip of paper, which the water tribe warrior picked up and then uncurled to reveal a map of the area. Then Sokka noticed that, "Good luck, Sokka-san," was written on the opposite side of the paper. Cliff, Dam Valley. That evening Sokka eventually reached a cliff overlooking a valley while following the map Naruto had given him. Further down, he could see a village and a dam. Before Jet, Smellerbee, Longshot, the Duke, Pipsqueak, and Sneers emerged on the cliff with a cart full of explosives, he heard someone approaching and promptly fled into hiding. Jet turned to the others and said, "Now listen. You are not to blow the dam until I give the signal. If the reservoir isn't full, the fire nation troops could survive. But what about the people in the town? Won't they get wiped out too?" the Duke responded. Turning to Longshot, Jet said, "Look Duke, that's a prize of ridding this area of the fire nation. Now don't blow the dam until I give the signal, got it?" she asked. After Longshot nodded, Sokka was about to slip away when he heard a noise and was abruptly raised out of the bushes by Pipsqueak while Smellerbee was holding a dagger to Sokka's throat. Before bringing the water tribe warrior in front of Jet, she and Pipsqueak asked, "Where do you think you're going, Ponytail?" Jet said, "Sokka-san. I'm glad you decided to join us." Smellerbee and Pipsqueak flung Sokka to the ground. Sokka got up and said, "I heard your plan to destroy the Earth Kingdom Town. Our plan is to rid the Valley of the Fire Nation," Jet stated. "There are people living there, Jet, mothers and fathers and children," Sokka screamed. "We can't win without making some sacrifices," Jet stated. "You lied to Aang-san, Naruto-san, Katara, Imoto and Sakura-san about the forest fire," Sokka screamed. "Because they don't understand the demands of war, not like you and I do," Jet replied. "I do understand. I understand that there's nothing you won't do to get what you want," Sokka replied. Before Pipsqueak and Smellerbee grabbed Sokka, Jet remarked, "I was hoping you'd have an open mind. But I can see you've made your choice." Jet turned to the two holding the boy and said, "Take him for a long walk," before saying, "I can't let you warn the others." Sokka exclaimed, "You can't do this, cheer up, Sokka-san. We're gonna win a great victory against the fire nation today," Jet replied. The river as Jet escorted her, Aang, Sakura, and Naruto to the reservoir, Katara said, "Jet-san. I'm sorry about how Sokka-ni San's been acting." Jet said, "No worries. He already apologized." Naruto's eyes widened and he paused for a moment. A person like Sokka would never apologize in such a manner. Aang questioned, "Really? Sokka-san apologized?" "Yeah. I was surprised too. I got the sense that maybe you talked to him or something," Jet responded. Katara replied, "Yeah, we did. I guess something you said got through to him. Anyhow, he went on a scouting mission with Pipsqueak and Smellerbee," Jet replied. "Well, I'm glad he cooled off. He's so stubborn sometimes," Katara responded. Sokka-san, Pipsqueak, and Smellerbee went on a scouting mission. He seems to have been captured. Before Naruto looked up at the treetops and saw Sasuke standing there, he thought, and here, I thought he could actually be a little useful. The blonde nodded, and the Uchiha nodded back before avoiding the spotlight. Prior to being launched skyward by a steam geyser, Naruto felt some air suddenly blowing up at him from the ground. "Alright, we're here. Under. Ground water's trying to escape from these vents. I need you guys to help it along," Jet said when Naruto arrived. "I've never used water. Bending on water I can't see. I don't know," Katara replied. Jet said, "Katara-san. You can do this. What about me?" inquired Aang. Jet remarked, "I know the Avatar can do this." Soon after, the four of them were standing around one of the vents, raising and lowering their arms to push the water up until it emerged from the hole and into the nearby small river. "Yes. Good job. This river leads to the reservoir. A few more geysers and it'll be full," Jet replied. Before the four of them ran in its direction, Aang pointed to another geyser and said, "Look, there's another steam vent." Before he left, Jet said, "Okay. You four keep it up. I'll go check on things at the reservoir." Katara said, "We'll meet you over there when we're done." As the four water benders continued to bend the water, Jet said, "Actually, it'll probably be better if you meet me back at the hideout when you're done." He then left, but Naruto stopped when he thought Jet was far enough away. Sakura said, "Naruto, what is it?" Before revealing that Jet had deceived them earlier and that Sokka might have been correct for once, Naruto said, "Before we do anything else, there's something you should know." Sakura shouted, "Why would Jet-san lie to us? In order to win us over, and it seems like it worked on three of us," said Naruto. Aang said, "Oh? Who?" and Naruto palmed his face. "But even if he lied then, this forest could still get burned down by the fire nation at any minute," Katara replied. "I'm not so sure about that. That might also have been a lie, plus I believe that he's captured Sokka-san," Naruto replied. "Nani? How can you say that? Jet-san wouldn't do something like that," Sakura screamed. Naruto remarked, "Well, if you don't believe me, you could go take a look at what your precious Jet-san is doing right now." "Fine, we will. And then he'll tell you how wrong your accusations are," Sakura screamed. With Smellerbee, Pipsqueak, and Sokka as she shoved Sokka, Smellerbee said, "Come on. Move along. How can you stand by and do nothing while Jet wipes out a whole town?" asked Sokka. Pipsqueak said, "Hey, listen, Sokka-san. Jet-san's a great leader, we follow what he says, and things always turn out okay." This was just before a big fireball flew past them, destroying the ropes that bound Sokka's hands as he leapt forward. Smellerbee and Pipsqueak turned to see Sasuke standing there, where the ball had come from. Before weaving a series of hand signals, he exclaimed, "Perhaps. But any good leader should know not to mess with a ninja. Kaden. Ryuka no Jutsu." Just as Sasuke appeared between the two freedom fighters and kicked Pipsqueak so hard that he was knocked unconscious and sent into a tree, a fiery dragon head suddenly flew towards them, but they leapt out of the way. After that, Smellerbee took out her daggers and tried to cut Sasuke, but the Uchiha blocked her attacks by drawing two kunai, one for each hand, that he had concealed in his sleeves. After that, Smellerbee leapt back before charging at Sasuke. She swung her left dagger at the Uchiha's head, but Sasuke was able to duck under it with ease and kick his opponent away. "What the? How was he able to avoid that? I believed I had him. And why are those eerie eyes there?" She was interrupted, though, when Sasuke appeared beneath her and kicked her into the air before leaping up himself. "Hey, where?" Smellerbee thought before her eyes widened as Sasuke appeared to have disappeared. Sasuke yelled, Shishi Renden. As he materialized above Smeller B and kicked her to the ground, essentially knocking her unconscious. Sokka exclaimed, "Whoa! I didn't know you could do that. It's a technique I've been working on for a while. Now come on, we need to get to the dam. The others should already be there," Sasuke replied. Cliff and Dam Valley 4 freedom fighters, including Sneers and the Duke, were setting off explosives in front of the dam when Naruto, Aang, Sakura, and Katara arrived at the cliff. Katara questioned, "What are they doing? Aren't those the red barrels they got from the Fire Nation?" asked Sakura. Katara questioned, "Why would they need blasting jelly?" When he realized what Jet was planning, Aang remarked, "Because Jet San's gonna blow up the dam." "Nani? That would destroy the town." "Jet.San wouldn't do that," Sakura responded. "Yes, I think he would, Sakura. Chan. We've got to stop him, Datbeo," said Naruto. As Aang removed his glider's wings and dashed for the cliff's edge, Katara remarked, "Jet.San wouldn't do that." However, Jet sped by and grabbed Aang's glider. "Yes, I would," exclaimed Jet. Katara questioned, "Jet.San, why?" Katara. "Chan. You would too if you just stopped to think. Think about what the Fire Nation did to your mother. We can't let that happen to anyone else, ever again," Jet replied. Katara exclaimed, "This isn't the answer." Jet started to say, "I thought your brother would understand," but Katara. "Chan, I want you to understand me," but Katara interrupted him. "Where's Sokka.Ni.San?" she inquired, her eyes welling with tears. Before Katara abruptly sent a stream of water out of her water bending pouch and knocked Jet back, Jet uttered, "Katara. Chan." Before running to retrieve his glider, Aang exclaimed, "I need to get to the dam." Jet's hook sword dropped just as he was ready to grab it, but Naruto sent Jet reeling backwards with a wave of air. Naruto commanded, "Aang.San. Grab your glider and get down to the dam," and Aang followed his instructions. Then, as Jet charged at Aang, Naruto appeared in front of him, holding one kunai in each hand, and pushed, making Jet leap back. Then, in a flash, Naruto snatched up 4 shuriken and hurled them all at the older boy, but Jet swiftly used his swords to deflect the deadly missiles. 4 clones then materialized as the blonde avatar made the Cage Bunshin hand sign. After applying wind chakra to each of their kunai, the 5 Narutos flung them all at Jet, who leapt to his feet, snatched a tree branch with his hook, swords, and then hauled himself to his feet. But as soon as he stood up on the branch, 2 of the clones materialized in front of him, both of them bending their right fists to make their blows more powerful. Just before 2 more clones appeared above him and sent a powerful wave of air in Jet's direction, sending him plummeting to the ground, they struck home, and Jet flew backwards straight through a tree. Then, on the ground directly beneath him, another Naruto, the one Jet assumed was the real one, appears. He then swipes his arm, directing a crescent-shaped blade of wind in Jet's direction. Then, in a quick reflex, Jet grabbed a nearby branch and dragged himself in its direction, barely escaping being cut in 2. All 5 Narutos suddenly materialized around him, but he swiftly grabbed 2 of them with his hook, swords and collided their heads before they could puff away. The other 3 Narutos then drew their kunai and charged at Jet, but he kicked one, causing the clone to puff away, then grabbed another and threw him at the 5th, causing them to both puff away. "That's odd." Before a sudden burst of air threw Jet off the branch and toward the ground, he thought, "I thought he only created 4 clones." He saw Naruto charge at him and used his hook, sword to block Naruto's kunai, landing with a thud before he got back up. Alongside Aang was startled to discover that no one was there when he descended and landed on the ground in front of the dam. He said, "Hey, where is everyone?" Aang turned to face the voice and saw Kakashi reading his book while leaning against a tree. "Don't worry, I've already taken care of them." With Jet and Naruto with a powerful airwave, Naruto pushed Jet back out on the cliff, sending the older boy skidding all the way to the cliff's edge. "Jet.San, tell me, why are you doing this? There are innocent civilians in that town," said Naruto. "You would do it too if the Fire Nation had taken your family away from you," Jet replied. "No, I wouldn't. I'd know better than to do something this stupid," said Naruto. "I didn't think you'd understand, anyway. Someone who doesn't understand how it is to lose their loved ones could never understand, Jet replied. You're right, I don't understand. But you still don't have to do it like this. Find another way to free the town, one that doesn't involve killing any of the civilians, Naruto replied. Jet exclaimed, there is no other way. You won't know that until you try. Jet turned to face Sasuke and Sokka in the direction of the voice. What happened to Pipsqueak and Smeller Bee? Jet responded. Sasuke remarked, they tampered with the fire and got burned. Jet's eyes widened as Naruto said, stop this madness, Jet.san. If you do this, you'll be no better than the fire nation. Jet then dropped his hook. Swords, causing both weapons to fall to the ground. Jet was going to approach Naruto and the others when the cliff abruptly gave way and he fell. You're right. I can't believe I've been so blind. Naruto shouted, Jet-san, as he dashed to the cliff's edge, but he was too far away. Then he abruptly disappeared, and before anyone could realize it, he had taken Jet's arm and lifted him up. Naruto said, hey, Jet.san. You alright? Jet replied, why? Yeah. I was aware that he could use air bending to move quickly, but this is absurd. Even my Sharingan couldn't keep up with his movements. He seemed to have traveled at the speed of light in some way, Sasuke thought. Ground based freedom fighter hideout. Later, since the freedom fighters needed to depart as soon as possible in order to make it to the North Pole in time, the group was standing in front of them to say goodbye. Naruto remarked, I hope we see each other again someday. Naruto accepted Jet's hand as he said, don't worry, I'm sure we will. Good luck with mastering the other elements. Naruto grinned foxily and said, thanks. From his perch atop Appa's head, Kakashi declared, alright, folks, it's time to leave. Sakura said, take care, Jet.san. Jet remarked, you too, Sakura-chan. Then he kissed her abruptly on the cheek, causing her to flush as she raised her hand to the spot. With a hint of jealousy in her voice, Katara yelled, hey, come on Sakura-chan, or we're leaving without you. Sakura saw that everyone else had already climbed into the saddle. Sakura remarked, oh, right. Before rushing to Appa and clambering into the saddle. Good luck with taking back that village. Aang replied. Jet said, thanks. When Kakashi said, yip. The sky. Bison lifted off the ground.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.